Okay, awesome. All right, we're live. So all right, I call this meeting to order at 7:05. Um, are there any changes or additions to the agenda before we approve it? Anna?
Hi, could we strike the programming fund? Thank you.
Okay, Devon?
Can you strike bag, please?
Daniela?
Hi, can we strike ASRF allocations and AAC travel mini grant allocations? Thank you.
Alicia?
Hi, can we strike ARC allocations, please?
Juan?
Can you please strike SFS applications?
Phoebe?
Can we strike TGIF allocations?
Anna, you got a hand still raised? It's probably by mistake.
No,
And
that's
then-
my bad. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Milan?
Okay, I'm gonna strike the appointments that ARC has not decided to proceed upon. So I'm going to strike Dakota from FICOM and then the entirety of student fee advisory for now because we still haven't decided on our candidates. And then the last two candidates for TGIF because we haven't interviewed them yet. And that should be it.
Okay. Is there any other additions or subtractions to the agenda? Anyone? Okay, awesome. So can we get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the agenda for August 9th.
Can we get a second? Oh. Okay. Eliana motion, Alicia seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. Giovanna?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting me raise my hand, but I raised my hand.
Okay, it's fine. All right, by a vote of 13-0, the agenda is approved. Okay, so I hope everyone got to review the minutes from last meeting 2 weeks ago. If there's not any change, well, if there's any changes, please raise your hand. I see some hands still raised. Are these new hands? Phoebe?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I forgot to lower it.
No, you're fine. Daniela?
Yes, mine is a new hand. It's just a quick edit to make sure that Geronimo's name is spelled correctly when we did the BBRC allocation conversation. I can type it in the chat. But thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I move to approve last week's minutes.
I second.
All right, Sarah motion, 1 second. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand. I don't know if it shows up.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, you might as well just give a verbal every time. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
By a vote of 13-0, the minutes from last week's meeting are approved. All right, now we're about to open it up for public comment. I know we got a lot of people here today, so hey, if this is your first time giving public comment, just realize public comment is the time for you to come to council and just kind of speak your piece about an issue or some issues, or just come to say what's up. Try to keep it under 4-5 minutes. And, just remember, freedom of speech doesn't hold you free from accountability. So please raise your hand to be promoted. I see Jeffrey. Can you promote Jeffrey? Okay, I think that's all we have.
Hi,
All
I'm
right,
here.
Jeffrey, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to join. Yeah, I just wanted to, and I think Joanna will go after me as well. I know that council just approved the agenda and they'll be taking a decision on the checks, but like I mentioned in the text, I sent just a few minutes before, we received some financial documents from Campus Life and ABC DeLuca this past weekend in our SSC and CRC training meetings. And we've noticed a lot of discrepancies in the information that administration is telling EMO coalition members, but also USAC. And so we feel that a decision shouldn't be taken until we have a meeting between administration, USAC, and the coalition to get all the accurate and factual financial information. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. Is there anyone else who wants to give public comment? We got one more. Can someone promote Kylie? Kylie, the floor is yours.
I just wanted to second what Jeffrey said. I think due to a lot of information that we just recently received on Friday from AVP DeLuca and like the accounting staff, I personally, as a retention cord, don't feel comfortable giving my opinion to our IVP, or I mean our EVP, on whether or not we should withhold checks. So I would like that strike from the agenda as well, that decision.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who wants to be promoted and talk? All right. So we'll close public comment here at 7:12. Now, before we get into the whole the funding part, in regards to what the statements just made, I mean, I guess it's something that we'll revisit, but I want you guys to know we're not like just ignoring you. Like we'll like probably bring you back. Or yeah, I think you're already promoted, so we'll kind of talk to you when we get to that point. So we'll go into funding, capital contingency. Oh, that's right. We don't have a FICOM. Hopefully we have one tonight. Yeah. All right. So I guess we should have stroked capital contingency and contingency programming. All right, we'll move straight into the special presentations, the mother orgs history training. Who do we have giving that?
It'll be me.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we got Jeffrey. All right, the floor is yours.
All right, Joanna, do you want to share screen or do you want me to do it?
I can go ahead and share my screen if that's okay with everyone.
Okay.
All right, just 1 second. Do I have the ability to do that? Oh, I do. Okay, perfect. Just 1 second. Okay, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yeah, it's clear.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Hello, my name is Joanna Resendiz. I am the internal chair for Mecha de UCLA, is essentially a co-chair. And I will be presenting half of the presentation on behalf of the mother organizations. And Jeffrey, would you like to introduce yourself now or later on?
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Jeffrey Umaña Munoz. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the access coordinator for Mecha de UCLA and the chairperson for ideas at UCLA.
Perfect. All right, so I will get started. This is a simple table of context of how this presentation will go. We'll start by describing why and who we are as in the mother organizations, then describing the CRC, SIOC, and the projects, moving on to CPO, recent history, and then what USAC can do to support us. All right, starting off with mother organizations. All right, we are a series of 10 organizations here at UCLA, including ASU, SP, VSU, APC, MSA, QA, PISA, ASA, MICHA, and IDEAS. All of these organizations exist because the Mother Organization Coalition aims to empower groups that are historically affected by prejudice, discrimination, and marginalization. As a coalition, we shall hold ourselves to this mission to ensure that marginalized communities shall have the resources to advocate for themselves and for their allies to solve community conditions. That is the simple message of why we exist and how we are bonded. And moving forward, I'll go into further detail. All right, so what we do as a series of organizations, each one of us, we throw cultural nights, we have ethnic studies, like different meetings that involve access and retention, yield programs, and we also have one of the largest grad ceremonies in the UCs. Each of our organizations, like most of us, do plan these grad ceremonies, which are also very important. All right, and we focus on access. So the coalition's access outreach projects aim to ensure that underserved communities are provided with the resources and opportunities needed to access higher education. So we also provide retention. The coalition's retention projects work with marginalized undergrad students by supplying resources that support students in their journey to graduation. The retention projects strive for 100% retention rates for these communities. All right. Questions will be asked at the end. So I'm so used to asking for questions. All right. So before I start to describe the CRC and SRC, CPO, and other parts of the MO coalitions in details, here is a list of key terms. So if everybody would like to just go over them on their own, I don't think it is necessary for me to read all of them, if that's okay. But one of the ones that I would like to emphasize is the Statement of Understanding. So the Statement of Understanding, the constitution of the committees, the document in which the committees derive their authority to use their student fees for retention and access. And then I would also like to emphasize the operational budget, the permitted budget that the committee does not get to touch when allocated money to the projects. So just different things like that. That's sort of one of the definitions. All right, so now I go into detail onto what the CRC, SRC, and the projects do, how they are related, and how they are created, why they were created to support student voices across the state, actually. All right, so we're starting with Campus Retention Committee. The MO have 5 projects under the CRC, which is the Campus Retention Committee. We have ASP, Mecha Calmeca, RAIN, CClear, and SPEAR. I can specifically talk on behalf of Mecha Calmeca, is that we support thousands of students here in UCLA to help keep them retained and improve the amount of students that graduate from UCLA. And as Jeffrey has pointed in the chat that I can see, we also just added Inspire and PISA's new retention project. So I apologize that is not there. So yes. So our student initiated outreach committee. So we have the MOs, they have 7 projects housed under the SIOC. Projects are SHAPE, PEER, HOPE, SPACE, MAPS, Mecha Chinachli, and AIR. All of these are used to go into their communities around California and the LA area to help give these underserved communities different forms of access into higher education. So that's why they are called the access part of the SRC and CRC. So yes. All right, and then as it says in the bottom, the CRC and SRC, along with their projects, are designed to be student-run and student-initiated. They're funded by USAC referendum fees, paid for by students, run by students. So as I move forward, we'll talk a little bit more on how they are funded by the referendum fees. All right, so here I have funding and flow of money. So the referendum fees are around $300 that is taken from the students through their Bruin bill. And that money, which is almost a form of tax that students are paying, is given to USAC. USAC then allocates that money to CPO, and CPO disperses it through the SRC and CRC. And then the CRC and SRC give it off to our projects such as Mecha Calmeca, Mecha Chinachli, Spear, and other projects as well that are under different MOs. And we decide how we will be using that with the support of everybody who is part of that project, of course. All right, so that is the basics of how the money should work. However, as it is said in the bottom, the CRC and SRC are intended to have full power of allocation for the student fees, but CPO took that power away from students. So due to the recession in 2008, CPO took control of about $2 million of student fees to ensure financial security of staff and security of resources. We still do not know where this money is going. All right, so following, there will be more detail about CPO. Go ahead, Jeffrey, if you'd like to start.
All right, yeah, thanks, Joanna. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about the conditions in CPO. This is also, I think, later on in the presentation, we'll also talk about the differing relationships that certain MOs have with the CPO that we think is important for council to consider whenever they're making their decisions. Next slide, please. All right, so what is the CPO? So the CPO is the Community Programs Office, which many of you probably know, one for being the full-time oversight of our projects for the MOs, but you guys might also know them for their service component, SAPOSA, the Community Programs Office Student Association. They also are very well known on campus for the basic needs work that they do, specifically through the holiday food giveaways and the CPO food closet. Essentially, CPO came to be, well, the modern iteration of CPO, the department came to be after UCLA admin withheld its trust from students to be able to oversee the CPO when it was just a loosely regulated program. So next slide, please. Sorry. All right, so a bit of a timeline to put this a little bit more into perspective. So to really get to the core of all of these issues, we do have to reach back until 68-69, when what was then the Black Student Union and is now the African Student Union, in collaboration with MECHA and its predecessor, the United Mexican American Students, created the High Potential Program and also the Early Outreach Program, which served as retention and access and outreach programs, respectively, for their specific communities and making sure that marginalized students had a way in. These programs ended up deteriorating and were pulled by the university after the murder of 2 Black Panthers directly on campus in front of Campbell Hall. And the academic advancement program was then created in the shell of what once was HPP and EOP. The idea was that AAP would take the place of these student-initiated, student-run programs and be completely under the oversight of university administrators. Fast forward to 1986 to 1987, over that past decade plus, the Black Student Association had been feeling a lack of student autonomy within AAP. And there's, a lot of different moments that we can talk about how student agency was really revoked within the space, including the creation and dissolution of a student advisory board. And so it's at this time that the current USAC president in 1986, Dean Flores, instructs his FICOM chairperson, Bob Alvarez, to withhold and refuse to send over the special education membership fees, or SMF funds, over to AAP, which were the funds that then funded AAP. 3 councils consecutively hold them for 3 years despite administrative pressure. And in 88 and 89, BSA and MECHA come together with pooling together the funds that were withheld over the past 3 years from AAP to form the Campus Retention Committee, which in the 90s leads to the creation of the first SOU in 92, with the first Campus Retention Committee consisting of BSA's, MECHA, ASA's, and SP's projects. VSU joined later on in the 90s, and then our other orgs, PISA, also joined on. And then the actually, no, sorry, that's for CRC, my bad. SIOC was created in the late 1990s, sort of more so in response to the end of affirmative action, both in employment and education opportunities as a result of Prop 209 passing at the state level and the UC Regents instituting Standing Regent Policy 1 and 2. And so the idea was that based on the CRC model, which already modeled student-initiated, student-run, and student-funded retention, that the same could be done for access and outreach projects. And so in 98, 99, the SIOC is created. Next slide. So in 2002, between the period of the 90s to 2002, the CPO is created as this loosely regulated program in what was then known as the Center for Student Programming, but you all now know as SOL. So the idea was that the CPO was a space created directly by these students, actually, who led the creation of the CRC and the SIOC with the idea that the CPO would be the space on campus where students of color and marginalized students could find community, build their power, and feel accepted and sort of shed the imposter syndrome that many of us feel here on campus at UCLA. The CPO becomes to be a really prized possession and partner for the MO Coalition, so much that during this point in time, the CPO becomes to be known as the liberated zone on campus, or, alluding to the fact that this was the one space on campus where our students truly felt like they had a full breadth of liberty to not only be themselves, but engage in academia in a culturally and politically relevant way that wasn't void of their community conditions. But in 2002, the CPO becomes departmentalized by UCLA after a series of transparency issues. Administration decides that it needs to have a much larger oversight over the CPO and over the programs held within the CPO to make sure that students aren't doing anything fishy with their money, apparently. And at this time, the CPO becomes to be assigned as the administrative oversight for our committees. Could you go back, Joanna, please, to the timeline? Sorry. All right, thank you. So from 2002 to 2006, we have the CPO finally being departmentalized, and at this point, they're assigned as the full-time administrative oversight for the CRC and SIOC. And by 2002, we have the final and current forms of the statements of understanding. In 2008, Tony Sandoval is named as the director of CPO. At the time that he's named to this position, he does have the support and approval from the MOs, given that he was part of our spaces and is actually the signatory for the Campus Retention Committee on the current CRC SOU. But at the same time, 2008 to 2009, the Great Recession hits and budget cuts hit the committees extremely hard, with our project director positions, which are our full-time employees, no longer being UC funded and instead fall on the backs of the committee to fund. So from this period onwards, there's a lot done within the committee space, but also the coalition space to make sure that the committees can be financially solvent. So this is really the period 2009 to 2016 up until SGR, when you see a lot of referendums being run and passed to help support CRC and SIOC initiatives. From 2010 to 2016, we see the rise of Tony and his appointment of administrators alongside him that align with perhaps his revised vision for the CPO, which has included disempowerment. And then this is at the time where we see a great rise of creation of division within the MO space that even leads MOs to run competing USAC slates against each other in a power struggle. At the same time, the CPO builds powers within the committee to essentially enable administration to have control over committee funding and also committee operations. Fast forward to 2019 to 2020, at this point, over this period of 10 years, the coalition is honestly really divided. Different instances of disempowerment and division caused by CPO and the repercussions leave the coalition without much consensus or common ground to stand on. And it isn't until 2019 to 2020 that we really see the coalition starting to attempt to piece itself back together, when some MOs released a letter saying that there were violations of the statements of understanding and demanding transparency of committee funds and resignation of admin. Although it is important to note that even then at this point, certain MOs did not sign on, as they did not feel the same way about the events that had occurred. But in 2020 to 2021, that academic year sees specific incompetence and retaliation to the release of the letter to the projects of the African Student Union, Samahang, and VSU. Next slide. So it's also at this point that it's important to note the dynamic relationships. So, regardless of the fact that we have these negative relationships with CPO, or that some of our MOs have these relationships with CPO, it is also important to note that there are MOs and projects that have much more positive relationships with the CPO. The CPO continues to provide all the projects with transportation and a variety of other support services. Even though according to administration, there's going to be a shift in that in the upcoming year. And to some projects that benefit a lot more from direct support from CPO, CPO continues to provide them with spacing support and much more material and supply support for all of their initiatives. Not all of the projects have the same level of support from CPO, as has been obvious, and not all of the projects also have this same negative and or positive relationship with CPO. And some have actually been hindered by the oversight and bureaucracy that CPO adds. But the important thing for council to know here is that you have to talk to all 10 MOs and get a clear vision of what each MO has experienced and what each MO has to bring to the table, and also what each MO wishes to see happen on the USAC level, but also within the CPO as a whole. There's a lot of dynamic relationships, a lot of personal history, a lot of org history. You can't look at the coalition as just one body. You have to see it as what it is, a group of 10 orgs, and you have to reach out to all 10 orgs. And as I'll mention at the end again, we really encourage folks, we didn't go through the individual orgs themselves because we hope that it serves as an incentive for council to reach out to each individual MO and receive a training like this for their community conditions. Next slide, please. All right, so to talk a little bit more about the problems that certain MOs face with the CPO, there's first the problem of financial transparency, which I think is what's most relevant to council. So both USAC and MOs have pushed over the past 10 years to see where $2 million of student fees are really going. And we've been met with stalling, vague reports that don't really break down what it is that our money is being spent on. And even, like I mentioned, even though we have these breakdowns, they're not itemized to the point where council or the committees or even the coalition can see exactly what our money is being spent on. Aside from that, there's also a hostile and unsafe work environment for certain members of our coalition and of our projects, where the CPO has fostered a toxic workspace for our community, and particularly for Black women, who were the leaders of 3 civil lawsuits against the CPO director and his associates that were just recently settled. And honestly, what was a cheat of justice. And regardless of that, several committee members and project employees throughout the years, both at the professional level and also just at the student level, have resigned in protest over what they've experienced as traumatic experiences in the community programs office. The final issue that MOs raise against the CPO is that the CPO is not transparent with the expectations and guidelines set on the committee, either for fund allocation or for direction of our projects. And that results in an administrative overstep and incompetence in being able to really exercise oversight over us. Specifically, most project staff this past academic year was not even hired until September of 2021 because of hiring delays and hiring freezes, even though usually staff are hired in spring quarter or over the summer. These problems threaten student autonomy and empowerment at UCLA, and there's various examples and various personal examples, but also org examples of different instances of all 3 of these problems, more than we could ever have the chance to talk about. But overall, these are the 3 main concerns we raise. Next slide, please. So the Students Empower movement. So in May of 2021, alumni, students, and MOs rallied together to protest against the hostility of CPO and the negligence and lack of response from UCLA Student Affairs, and they met with the chancellor very soon after. But despite all these efforts, UCLA campus administration continued the CPO to remain in its exact same place with its exact same status and relationship to the committees, which continue to damage student empowerment and autonomy. Next page, please. So why should any of this matter to you? Overall, it's because you're in USAC, you're the USAC members, and because from what we have, from the information that we can tell, from the numbers that we can piece together, it is very obvious that there is an abuse of the fees that you and your constituents pay every year. So next slide. So this opens up the conversation about USAC involvement, how USAC plays into all of this, the history of USAC and all of this. Next slide. So to open up a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about slates and the statements of understanding. So USAC today, the way that USAC operates and the way that people see USAC is honestly largely a result of coalition organizing efforts that helped to radically reshape the USAC landscape over the past 50 years. The coalition actually finds its roots in the 1970s Third World Coalition, which was a slate that was active in the 1970s and supported by some of the original coalition members, which was formed with the idea to transform USAC from being an event-centered body to being an active arm for empowerment and support for marginalized students on campus. Ever since then, various iterations of MO-derived or MO-backed slates and candidates have run and won seats on council, and they have used them then to advance student autonomy and agency over student-initiated and student-run spaces, but also across campus and increase students' power in every way that they can. This MO-led transformation of USAC politics led to the birth of a new partnership between both the coalition and council, which ended up leading to the negotiations with admin that resulted in the Statements of Understanding, or the SOU. And these documents are the legal binding agreement on how our committee's referendum fees should be allocated and how the funds, the projects, and the space must be governed as a whole. They serve as our constitution, and they emphasize and guarantee the authority of student over all the matters that regard the projects, and also empower the university to provide only necessary and requested administrative support and oversight. Next one, please. So USAC involvement since the SOUs has largely been about being on the defense. When it's comprised of members that are backed or are directly from mother orgs, USAC has often joined the coalition in demanding the respect and upkeep of the SOU, and has echoed the concerns of the coalition in the past. Specifically, USAC has been involved in the following ways. Above all else, each year, regardless of the situation the coalition may be in, they exercise their appointment power, and the coalition works with USAC to make sure that the proxies being appointed to the CRC and SIOC meet an agreed criteria of knowledge, respect, and embrace of the space and their central mission and ideology of SISR, to create a line of defensive votes and members that can help keep administration at bay, but also keep them accountable and keep an open line of communication between council and the committees. Council has also worked together with the coalition to support us in garnering student support to approve the new referendum that came across in the 2010s to fund the SIOC and the CRC, like the student justice referendum, the pledge referendum, the post referendum. There's a long list of them, honestly. USAC also has passed resolutions that denounce acts of disempowerment, harassment, and or financial mismanagement. And at times, including tonight, these resolutions have also withheld referendum fees from the CPO, most notably this past November of 2021. And then additionally, with that in mind, USAC has also withheld fees as a tactic to obtain necessary information and or support demands that the coalition has. Next slide, please. So that leads us a little bit into where we are today, to bring things up to speed a little bit more about where we are on withholding fees and the Murphy Hall sit-in. So in the past academic year, a majority of the council members were either on or were allies of For the People, or FTP, which was a slate that was backed by the MOs. And in November of 2021, USAC unanimously voted to pass a resolution that withheld fees that were to be distributed to the CPO until the demands of the coalition were met. Some of these demands included the removal of CPO as the administrative oversight and the removal of Antonio Sandoval as CPO director, as well as other specific demands. Next slide, please. This led after they withheld fees in fall of 2021, USAC then joined in a partnership with a disabled student union and the MO Coalition in winter 22 in the Strike for Our Safety, which was initially centered around protesting the campus's reckless return to in-person learning, even though Omicron was actively on the rise, and there was no accommodations or no leniency for our disabled student and staff. But the strike ended up becoming a frontal assault by several student communities, including individual MOs, but also the coalition as a whole, in demanding material change in the way that UCLA approaches safety for marginalized students. And this led to the longest sit-in UCLA history, which was the 16-day Murphy Hall sit-in, which yielded the current state of affairs for our committees and 3 individual MOs. And you'll be able to see a lot more of those exact results in the folder of resources that we'll provide at the end of this presentation. But some of the most notable results specifically with regards to the committees was the launch of the external review, some revisions in hiring policy, and also the introduction of the sole intermediary so that committee members and projects wouldn't even directly interact with the CPO anymore. Next page. Oh, sorry, Joanna, do you want to add on to the sit-in? I know Joanna was there personally.
I was there personally. I slept 14 days there. I did take off 1 weekend off from there. It was a very intense time, but I am glad it happened. I'm glad that we have the results that came with it. And I want to say thank you to everybody who was there as well. I know that there are some people who are in this meeting who were there both in person and both virtually, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm not sure what else to add. I just wanted to put that out there. This is the type of work that the MOs puts together when they are in support and supported by other organizations. And thank you to DSU and everybody who was there as well.
Thank you, Joanna. Next slide, please. All right, so that leads us into what really we're all here about. And it's really that as USAC, we're just trying to reemphasize to you all that it's your job to uphold and respect the statements of understanding. You're a signatory on the SOU, but it's also, and because of that, it's your job to defend our student-initiated and student-run spaces from administrative negligence and overstep. It's also your job to ensure that there's fiscal transparency and soundness over student referendum fees that you're sworn to protect. And it's your job to serve and support students directly, especially those that are most marginalized, including by the university. Next slide. So, that just leaves us with how you all can get more involved. And I think these are a great list of 5 steps that you can always make sure to keep in mind as you go about your council terms. And it's first that you need to research and explore testimonies and stories from those involved. This is what I mean. You need to make sure that you're reaching out to all the MOs, including and especially the MOs that have differing opinions over what the direction that the coalition and that our spaces should take, so that council is not only well-versed in what the coalition history is, but in what coalition members at this time want and need from their council. So you need to listen and put the voices of our communities at the forefront, especially when you're taking up issues that affect us directly. Also, make sure to ask questions, reach out, make sure that anything that doesn't make sense to you, that you're getting your questions answered and resolved. The only way that USAC and the coalition can have a really good relationship is if there's clear and stable, secure communication between the two parties. And also get involved, use your office to uplift and directly support the MOs. Make sure that when you have vacancies in your offices that you're reaching out to organizations to make sure that you're being representative of the student body, or even join an MO. We're always open to taking in new members, which you're open to join any of the ones you want, but of course we encourage you to join the ones that pertain to you specifically. And we encourage you all to stay updated by looking at the next slide, which includes some of the ways that you can stay in communication with us. Obviously, we have that chat between voting reps of the coalition and the USAC council members, which is probably the most secure way for us to get information between each other. I'll pass it back to Joanna to close us out.
Thank you so much for listening to this great presentation. Jeffrey, me, and many other people put in a lot of effort in building this presentation, just the slides in general. And I would like to ask you guys to ask us any question. I encourage all questions to both of us, and we'll answer either one that we feel comfortable with as fully to our understanding as we can. So thank you so much again.
Thank you two so much for this great slideshow and presentation. Definitely just learned a lot. I want to open it up to council members. Do you have any questions?
Hi, let me know if you feel comfortable talking about this or not, but with regards to next steps for the possible vote on CPO checks, do you have any advice?
Yeah, our advice is actually that we strongly believe council shouldn't take a vote tonight. We don't think that honestly, if we don't have the correct information, being the ones that have projects in these spaces, there's no way USAC has the correct information either. And we're asking that at the very least, council waits until we meet with admin together as a coalition and as all of council, all of us together to like call them out on the indiscrepancies and contradictions and the fishiness that we're seeing in the financial documents they're sending over to our committees. And honestly, until we don't have that conversation, the coalition isn't going to issue any recommendations.
So should we just table this for tonight?
I agree with tabling it as well. I understand how busy you all are, but I truly believe that a meeting together just to have, educate ourselves more would be excellent. So tabling it would be great.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I had a question, and I think go back to, I think you had a specific slide about the way the money goes from USAC to CPO and then back to the SIOC and CRC. So could you talk a little bit more about that specifically? I don't know if you have any numbers, but so CPO gets the money from USAC and then gives it out to SIOC and CRC, right? And you kind of explain why that's the case because of, I guess, the whole 2008 thing. Has CPO, talk with both of these committees in a way to transition back to, where the funds, I guess, go directly to SIOC and CRC? And my second question is, of the funds that go to CPO, what percentage of that makes it back to SIOC and CRC?
Yeah, so I'll clarify first. So in 2008, what happened was that's when we get the creation of the operational budget, which is a portion of our budget that's been set aside to be permanent for what we call like everyday expenses that are meant to keep the light on. This flow of money is actually set by the SOU. And so the money that USAC collects from the referendum, if they didn't go to CPO, they would go to whoever student affairs assigned as like the administrative oversight department of the CRC and the SIOC. So like, even if it was like just student affairs, it would go USAC student affairs and then the committees or any other department. But since student affairs is assigned CPO, that's why it goes to CPO first. And the way that it works, there's, and also I'll just share this now. Here's a link to a folder with a lot more resources. In that folder, there's a specific PDF. It's titled, what is that? It's titled Flow of Referendum Fees. It explains in a lot more detail the way that this flow of money works. We just didn't want to put it on here because it's so text heavy, but it starts out first that student referendum fees are collected and compiled from the Bruin bill. And then USAC sends that money to SGA to divide the money based on the language that's dictated by the referendum fees. SGA then uses a formula based on those parameters decided by USAC and the referendum language to divide the money into different checks. And then the FICOM chairperson then receives that check, who is then that final like signature on the check that once signed off gets sent over to the CPO. And then the CPO business office receives the checks, at which point they're transmitted over to the CRC and the SIOC. So there's never been that conversation because this has just been the way that it's always worked. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and my question too was like, okay, so it goes to CPO and CPO just gives all of that money to SIOC and CRC? Like it gives that money back to you guys fully, or does it like get like some money from it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that's decided by referendum fees. Honestly, I don't have an exact percentage or even an exact amount, but certain referendum give money like back to CPO directly, like I mentioned, to their SIPOSA component. There's also one that specifically funds their food closet. And I think that might be all the money that goes back directly to CPO, I think.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, we're going to discuss this a little bit more in depth when we get to new business, and I guess we'll take into consideration what you said about even tabling for next meeting, and then we'll just go from there. So we'll revisit that. We'll get into these appointments. This is probably going to be a pretty long meeting, so I just want to give everyone in here a heads up. So first off, like we need full participation tonight because we need people like motioning and seconding and asking questions. All right, so, or this meeting's gonna like last till like 3 a.m. Okay, so I know we haven't made an appointment in a while, so I just want to remind everyone. So basically, this is how it goes. We announce the person, they give a opening statement. We ask them questions, about 3 to 5 questions, and at that point they give a closing statement. We let ARC give their recommend. Well, I think we talk first, we discuss it first and talk about like, hey, this is what they said in their interview. I wish I would have heard more of this. We hear ARC recommendation and then we make a vote on it. Okay, so we got a lot of appointments tonight, so let's make sure that we're asking questions and we're motioning and seconding everything. Devon.
Quick clarifying question. For the folks, my Wi-Fi was out, so you might have answered this already, but for the folks that have the line crossed out, are we not interviewing them today?
Yeah, I had a question about that because we
And then-
approved the agenda already, right?
Well, oh, sorry, I don't know. I'm not answering that, but I have a second part of my question as well.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And also if we are not interviewing them, are we not, like, is there only one? I'm just confused. If we're not interviewing them, is it like still an equal opportunity for them, or are we interviewing them later, or what in that regards?
Yeah, so I can answer that question. So ASC forwarded us like individuals. So some seats were contested. The ARC had to choose like between. So we chose one of the candidates and then voted on that candidate, which is why we had to strike some from the agenda. We couldn't strike it like earlier just to maintain like transparency with the public. So we just stroked them like during the meeting. But right now, all of the committees should have at least one person that we can vote on. And then the ones that have more than one, those committees need like more than one appointment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Wait, so for the individuals that got struck, if ARC, so this is my impression of like the way ASC and ARC is supposed to work. If they make it through ASC, the appointment search committee, and they're going to council, right? And then ARC just kind of gives their interview. So I don't think ARC, from my understanding, has the like ability to say like, well, we don't want this person to go to council, or we don't want this person, unless that person like pulls their application. So did these individuals that we struck, or did they make it through ASC? Did they do an appointment with ASC, and did ASC forward them to ARC?
I think ASC forwarded us more than one applicant for like each position that only needed one applicant. So I'm not sure. I thought that ARC would choose amongst those applicants, but I think there was a little confusion on that part.
No, yeah. So yeah, from my and Josh or Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure like if ASC, like ASC's job is to forward people to ARC to get them like, because once ASC forwards someone to ARC, right, that means ASC is saying, hey, we interview this person and we think they're, they have a good potential, a good chance to like join or have this position. And then ARC, your sole job is, from my understanding, is to just literally like interview them and then give a recommendation, right? You do like a vote, and then we still have to interview the person in council. If the person wasn't going to come to council at all, then ASC wouldn't forward them to ARC.
Okay, that makes sense. We'll do that for the future. I think that there was a little confusion with ASC, or else we would have like 3 applicants per like position that would need only one person.
Yeah, well, it's still good to like, because this is how we're gonna do it, right? Like, it's still good to have, you can have like 3 or 4 people, right, for a position. We're gonna interview all of them. Wait, let me see, because that does make sense. We'll have to figure that out, but we definitely want to make sure that we have like 2 or 3 people. Jessica, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, so typically council should just be interviewing the final candidate. So if you have like a few folks you're considering for a position that only has one opening, that clarification should be resolved within ASC and ARC before they come to council to be approved, because you all are basically just giving the final approval. So you do interview, but you think of it as like the final step. So you're only going to get one candidate if there's one position open, and then you'll interview them and you'll either say yes or no. If you say yes, they fill the position. If you say no, then ASC and ARC would need to forward another candidate to try to fill that role, but you shouldn't really be interviewing, council should not be interviewing multiple people for only one opening, because then it gets a little bit confusing and it's difficult to try to like do that at the table. So you all should really just be like the final interview, basically, if that makes sense a little bit.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I just okay, that makes sense. I think, yeah, I guess my whole thinking was like we could interview like 3 or 4 people or 2 or 3 people, and then like we like do the vote, like, all right, votes for this person, votes for this person, and the person with the most votes. But that makes sense. Yeah. So all right, well, that's the way we'll go for. So I guess without further ado, we'll open the floor up to Joshua. Is Joshua here? Is he
Hi,
promoted?
yeah, sorry, I'm here. I just got promoted. I can't turn my video on, but yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that.
All right, no problem. Hey, welcome, Josh. You can start by giving your opening statement.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. I know, as Carl mentioned, it's going to be a long meeting, so really appreciate the time. My name is Josh Prentice. I'm up for appointment for FICOM chair for this upcoming year. Right now, I'm a rising fourth year student at UCLA studying economics with personal pronouns he, him, his, studying in the honors college as well. Right now, I've had about 3 years of experience in FICOM, with this past year serving as vice chair. And happy to announce that this past year in FICOM, we had a record year funding the most amount of applications with the most amount of money. But personally, I think even with that success, as the previous presentation, as we discussed, USAC does need to be shaken up with some new ideas, specifically in the funding process. Right now, through SGA and FICOM, a lot of it is actually very manual, and makes it very difficult for student officers within mother organizations and other organizations on campus to get funding that they need for cultural and just general student events. And so my vision for this year is to be able to make this highly technical role a bit less manual, make it more automated, and bring in my years of experience to change the funding process and make it easier for people to see a transparent and accountable funding process, so that everyone can get student fees. We can have a more cohesive student body that has more events promoting culture and transparency.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. So we'll open the floor up for council members to ask Josh questions. So yeah, please raise your hand and ask a question. This would be the individual that would come to every council meeting and, kind of update us on stuff. So first question is Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for taking your time to come to talk to us, first of all. My question was, I wanted if you could, to expand on what you plan to implement to make USAC finances more transparent. Just what changes do you plan on implementing to do that?
Absolutely. I think that's a really great question and really important for this upcoming year. I think the first thing is one of the things that FICOM did a good job of this past year was leveraging social media and growing its social media presence to the point where we have a decent following. And we actually haven't utilized this besides, announcing changes to office hours. So the first thing I think is creating transparency reports, at least with USAC each week. We report, capital and contingency programming, the amounts and the amount funded. I think that's something that's great to be broadcasted to the broader UCLA student community, just through Instagram, to make it more transparent with, hey, here's what we're actually doing with our funds. I think on top of that, another thing that's really important is creating a more automated funding process that demonstrates, here's how much we're actually funding, showing similar information as transparency reports through social media, and making it less manual. So students, they submit an application, they say, hey, where's this money coming from? Am I getting my money? And at every step of the way, SGA has to basically answer every request. So I think automating it through third-party ticketing websites is a better source to be able to create transparency for individual student organizations. I think globalized transparency reports with the macro amounting of funding is better for the broader UCLA community to see where funds are going and how they're being allocated. are at least the two brief ideas that I have off the top of my head for increasing transparency in FICOM.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, okay, I guess I'll ask a question. All right, and so, yeah, you kind of talked about your experience of being within FICOM over the last couple of years. Could you just talk a little bit about, like, why do you think you're you're the best person for the position, and where do you see the future of the FICOM, like the finance committee? Yeah.
Absolutely, another great question. I think it's actually helpful to touch a little bit more about my background prior to answer this question. So at UCLA, I'm involved with a couple other finance organizations, and also in current internships, involved in finance internships at a couple of different places across Wall Street. And I think one of the things that I've seen in my experience in these 3 years is increasing transparency, increasing students from marginalized backgrounds within the financial world as a whole. I think being able to do this, puts FICOM in a really unique situation where it has the ability to create an increased diversity not only on its own board, but on the broader financial community at UCLA as well. So in this past couple of years, one of the things that I've really seen that has been great to experience, and large result was due to Jenny Wang's leadership as FICOM chair last year, was increasing the amount of women on our FICOM committee. So this past year, we had over 50% of the board being made up of women. I think in promoting transparency, as well as just students from marginalized backgrounds and non-traditional backgrounds, is hosting, or maintaining that ratio, but also bringing in more transfer students. So historically in the past, actually FICOM typically does not hire transfer students and tries to, bring in freshmen to go into sophomores and getting most number of years as possible for experience, which is similar to what I went through. But I think having a more diverse set of ideas with non-traditional students such as transfers, a lot of women on the FICOM board, creates more diverse perspectives, which leads to more diverse outcomes. FICOM can very simply just, we see an application, we fund it, we call it a day. But I think, having the amount of funds that we do and funding more unique student events that promote and benefit marginalized communities and take into account students from non-traditional backgrounds really has a better result at the end of the day. So I think that's what I would say, and hopefully that FICOM in the future can continue to be a internal community that's diverse and can promote diverse outcomes as a result as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. We got, wait, someone else got their hand raised? All right, Juan.
Hi, Joshua. I have a question for you. So in your application, you mentioned that you were vice chair. So I wanted to also bring that to council that Joshua was last year's vice chair of the FICOM, of the finance committee. I wanted to ask you, Joshua, what did you learn in that role, and how do you, and what will you be taking on? What lessons have you learned, and what will these lessons influence you as chair for next year?
Yeah, really appreciate the question and think this is important to touch on as well. So this past year, a lot of my roles were focused on supporting Jenny, last year's FICOM head chair. And so a lot of that would be, digging into correspondence with student organizations, dealing and working with SGA pretty closely. And from a result of that, I think a couple key things came up on a touch of a lot of manual input required for the funding process, which I touched on earlier and I'll expand upon. But I think also in new ways to improve the FICOM guidelines. Specifically for one example, I think in the ways that, what I examined throughout this year in dealing with some student organizations was actually how we funded retreats. So for example, if a student club is having a cultural or is having just, a bingo retreat, for example, just purely hypothetical, and they have 16 people versus a student organization that's 50 people that's focused on promoting culture and diversity, the difference between 16 and 50 people is actually only $100 increase. And so right now retreats and the way they're funded are actually very difficult and a little backwards. And so we want to be able to promote in terms of retreats, a funding focus on quality of outcomes and be more value oriented as opposed to strict quantitative requirements. So I learned that throughout this year and want to improve some of the guidelines in that respect. I think also in terms of, this year we had a record amount of applications, which also led to a record number of emails and, questions due to how manual this process is. The whole funding process for FICOM is held in Google Sheets, Google Forms, SGA hosts through Excel spreadsheets, instead of automation at every step of the process with tickets being automatically made at each step. So for a student organization, if they want to check on their updates, they have to email us, they have to email SGA, bog us down with emails, which everyone's busy, and it creates to a slower response time instead of just checking an automatic ticket that was made specifically for them. So I think in terms of lessons I've learned was, the importance of setting guidelines and re-examining existing guidelines, as well as the importance of automation within a very manual and very difficult funding process.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua. That was our last question. Could you give your closing statement?
Absolutely. Really appreciate everyone's time tonight. I know things are very busy on all of your ends. So really appreciate just taking the time and all the thoughtful questions as well. As I mentioned, I think for this upcoming year, FICOM, a really big focus is on transparency, equity, as well as just being accountable with the amount of funds we're using, where those funds are going, and how we're distributing those to groups. Hopefully in this upcoming year, FICOM can be a place of diversity and diversity of outcomes with a lot of representation from non-traditional and marginalized student backgrounds. And I'm hoping that, working with, if appointed, working with a lot of counsel to be able to better the funding process, consistently hear new perspectives, new feedback to make this even better. At the end of the day, coming to UCLA is already difficult. Everyone's here trying to figure out who they are, what communities they belong to. At the end of the day, no one wants to worry about finances. And so hopefully we can, as a student body, grow to the point where we can focus on, community and culture as opposed to just finances and make this process easier. So again, thank you all for your time and really appreciate the thoughtful questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Eliana, I see you have your hand raised. We're done with the question period. Do you have something else to add?
I just want to say thank you so much, Joshua. Appreciate it. Thank you. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we'll go straight into, can we get ARC recommendations?
Yeah, so ARC approved Joshua by a 3-0 vote.
Okay, awesome. Does anyone have any questions or, does council want to discuss anything regarding Josh? Okay, can we get a motion?
I move to approve Josh to the FICOM chair.
Second, Divine.
All right, Milan motions, Divine seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
Awesome. All right, well, by a vote of 13-0, Josh, you are confirmed as the Finance Committee Chair. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate the time, and I look forward to working with you all. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you. Good hearing from you.
All right, moving straight into Budget Review Director. So council, we'll try to I'm trying to make it to where we give everyone probably 8 to 10 minutes per interview so that we can kind of keep it going because there's a lot of people. So we'll try to do 2 to 3 questions. Definitely want to make sure everyone get those questions in though. Okay. So we'll go to Budget Review Director Dakota. Is he promoted yet?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, you're free to give your opening statement.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. It's really good to see a lot of the council members again. I'm very fortunate to be here. And my name is Dakota Edison. I am a rising senior, majoring in economics and double minoring in accounting and professional writing. And my pronouns are he, him, his. And as Carl mentioned, I am applying to be the budget review director this upcoming year. My past 3 years within USAC and different funding spaces at UCLA and UCSA communities has been very enlightening in terms of the financial situation across the UCs and what we can do better in terms of making it more transparent and accessible, as well as just ensuring that it's more effective in helping students and focusing on their retention efforts and other outreach efforts that they're going on, that are going on. So kind of talking about my goals for budget review director, I do really want to promote more transparency and accessibility within like the actual BOD fund, which is one of the larger funds that that role oversees, as well as actually bringing back things like the transparency reports that the BRD used to put out every quarter with the IVP, or even just kind of reaching out to Daily Bruin again to kind of start that up again, because I know that that's something that's kind of fallen off in the past. So I really, through my experience and the knowledge that I've learned within USAC, especially being a funding director these past 3 years now, I am very excited to kind of enact those plans and ensure that like the BRD funds and everything are accessible, and that, USAC is being held accountable and how they're allocating funding, as well as what it's being used for, just to ensure that students are having their fees used properly and in manners that best advocate for them and their interests, especially because of how much, we oversee as a whole within like the USAC budget.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. We'll open it up for questions. Council members, please raise your hand if you got a question. All right, Naomi.
Hi, so in this position, how will you work to support those that come from historically excluded groups and non-traditional groups on campus?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you asking that question. Kind of referencing my, experience within USAC, also working to, run for the Financial Sports Commission this past election cycle. I was very keen on developing those relationships and understanding the different dynamics that go on within these communities, especially ones that I don't directly identify with. So especially kind of referencing my run, I've created a lot of really direct and personal connections with these individuals, where it allows me to truly understand their needs and ways to, better have funding better serve them. So kind of referencing, especially this past year running ASRF and TGMF, there's been a substantial amount of guideline changes that make funding more accessible for different purposes. Whether it's just like funding different types of flights for study abroad programs that students saw lots of benefits from, or even just working to more directly reach out to students who are applying to grad programs and touring colleges, and being able to afford paying for flights and other accommodations to actually attend these interviews. Being able to actually reach out to these students directly and find tangible ways to create change for them has been very important to me. So, just being able to hear these students' concerns and say, hey, let me look into that for you and see what I can personally do for you, whether it's, just a small thing like figuring out how we can allocate funding, like especially within AAC, this is actually something that was very important. We were, moving money around to kind of get things properly funded for a lot of student orgs that had really important projects going on this past year. So continuing that advocacy and making sure that that's done, especially on the BRD side, running BOD, and also just kind of making sure that students are connected with other funding directors to have those conversations and also find ways to tangibly change, funding guidelines and accessibility is very important. I think that that's going to be the best way that we can best advocate for these students, their needs, and understand exactly where they need the funding that at the end of the day they're paying for to serve them.
Awesome, thank you.
Align.
Yeah, so I know that for this position, transparency is really important. So what are your specific plans to kind of promote transparency in this position?
Yeah, thank you. So I kind of touched on this briefly, but in the past, there has been the quarterly reviews of the budget, which essentially just kind of looks through every allocation that different funding bodies, not even just like BOD, but like all of them have done throughout the quarter. So just understanding the dynamics between that and making sure that that's very transparent as much as we can be is going to be really important. I also mentioned this, but there used to be a partnership with the IVP office, which I would love to bring back in terms of making sure that that's getting out there to students and getting into their hands directly to understand exactly what the money they have available to them to apply to entails, and then also just ensuring that students are getting more direct outreach, whether that's working through like the MOs and other campus organizations that aren't necessarily aware of all of the funding options they have available to them, and just ensuring that we're essentially auditing ourselves and in our efforts to understand exactly where we can do better. And I think that's something that's very important just from a funding aspect within like USAC, especially just ensuring that we are best advocating for students, reaching out to them directly and finding ways to help them is going to be really important. And I do think that For me, that's going to be a lot of direct outreach to campus organizations and just kind of informing them of the options that they have available to them, because in an anecdotal sense, a lot of my conversations last year would be reaching out to organizations and saying like, hey, I saw you were hosting this event, and I really think that ASRF or maybe TJMF can assist you guys in funding this. And it would be a conversation where like some of these organizations had no idea that this was even available to them. So I do think that having that direct outreach and just creating a bigger repertoire of information on how to apply for funding and the best ways to get approved is going to be very important. And it's going to be a really effective way of creating a lot more transparency and accessibility within USAC funding.
Okay. Last question. Do we have anyone that want to ask a question? Going once, going twice. Okay. Dakota, you're free to give your closing statement.
Yeah, so first I just wanted to say thank you guys again for taking the time to do all these appointment interviews. I know that it's taken up a lot of time in your days, so I really appreciate your efforts. And, you know, I just kind of want to touch on, again, my visions for this role. I do think that it's one of the more important roles within the actual funding space within USAC, just to ensure that we are best advocating for students and their needs and ensuring that they are at the forefront of our decision making, which I know a lot of you all resonate with in your own decision-making processes, especially about funding. So making sure that I'm holding myself accountable and best advocating for students is going to be my top priority in this role. And I really look forward to working with SGA and, you know, the new FICOM chair, Josh, to ensure that that's getting done and just making sure that USAC becomes a more accessible space for students and other organizations to host their projects and achieve funding for it, so that there's less strain on the student financially to you know, take or seize the opportunities that are available to them, especially at a prestigious institution like UCLA. So I really look forward to doing that with you all. And once again, thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Does council have anything they want to discuss? Any questions, comments, concerns? Yes, Theodore?
Yeah, first I want to say that I actually, outside of a context of student organizations or student government, I have actually personally gotten the opportunity to know Dakota. And I know he is an individual of integrity and leadership skills, especially with people who are who may have less expertise in their field than he does. And I think he's very open to all student voices and anyone that truly seeks to as well benefit or help to benefit the cause of the student voice as much as he wants to. And so I truly believe that he would be that he would truly be good for the role that he's seeking.
Thank you. All right, who we got? Eliana?
Yeah, I just want to add also, knowing Dakota, he's definitely been a very reliable and kind and thoughtful person and would be excellent in this role.
Thank you, Eliana. All right, so we'll get into it. Art, can we hear recommendations?
So we approved Dakota with a vote of 3-0 to 0. Approve.
Okay, thank you. All right, can we get a motion?
I move to approve Dakota Edison as the budget review director.
I second.
I second.
I heard one. So Sarah motion, 1 second. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
All right, by a vote of 12 to 0 to 0, the motion passes. Dakota is our new budget review director. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate it once again, and I really look forward to working with you all to achieve the goals that I've kind of outlined today. So thank you again.
Awesome, thank you. All right, getting back into it. Next, we have the community activities committee position. We have Ayana. Is she promoted already?
Yes,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
here.
How you doing? Oh, I'm sorry, Phoebe. Is that a new hand or?
Sorry, I keep forgetting to lower my hand.
No, you're fine. All right, so Ayana, if you want to give your opening statement, you're free to do so.
All right, thank you, and good evening, everyone. My name is Ayana Waring. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a rising 4th year, majoring in political science and minoring in African American studies, and I'm applying for the CAC appointment position. My roles and participation in the SAPOSA is what sets me apart from other candidates. So not only have I volunteered and held positions within student orgs on campus like Beyond the Score, Ready, ProMinds, and LEAP, I have been elected to be SAPOSA's internal chairperson. I am the first Black woman to be the internal chairperson for SAPOSA, which oversees about 25 student-initiated and student-led projects. So I think participating and taking lead on these roles in community service definitely gives me the experience and I guess, so to say, experience to, I guess, to share my experience with the CAC on student organizations on campus and their needs.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, we'll open it up to questions. Council members, please raise your hand, ask some questions. All right, I'll kick it off. Oh, there we go, Sarah.
Hi, again, thank you, Ayana, for coming to speak with us and interviewing. I guess my question was, what's one thing, if you were chosen as for the community activities committee, what's one thing you hope to implement during your tenure?
Definitely, I have an idea about, because like I said, I am the executive director for ProMinds, and one difficulty I definitely have is filling out the regular fund that CAC has for community service projects. So I think sitting down with student orgs on the ways they could budget their services for the academic year is especially important. It's considering that we're also about to face a recession, or we're entering a recession. So I'm pretty sure money and finances are very important, a very important topic to talk about. And I'm pretty sure, and I know for a fact that these community service projects need funding in order to serve marginalized communities and communities that they come from. So I would definitely like for committee members, and I intend to, if elected onto the CAC, sit down personally with student orgs, talk about their budgets, teach them how to work their budget and what they should add to it and what they should prioritize and what they should take away.
Thank you. Next question, council members. All right, I'll ask one. Yeah, so Ayana, why do you feel that you're personally the best person for this position?
Thank you for that question. So I've been a part of community service projects my entire tenure here at UCLA. So I started off with Beyond the Score my first year, which isn't under SAPOSA, but it was an advocacy group to eliminate standardized testing from the admissions process. And then I also participated with Ready, and then I became a volunteer director for LEAP, which helped marginalized students in the Inglewood area with their homework, teaching them what college is about. And now I'm the executive director for ProMinds, which is very similar to LEAP. It's going to help students from low-income backgrounds on their homework, educationally and holistically. So I believe my experience within these community service that are student-initiated and student-led definitely would benefit in the CAC, just because I know what these student services need. I know the kinds of communities that they serve. And I also want to recognize that it's not only I'm not only going to be representing SAPOSA just because I'm the SAPOSA internal chairperson. I'm going to be representing all student orgs on campus. And so I think that would be very, very beneficial to get in touch with every other student org and share my experience with them as well.
All right, and then last question, Juan.
Thank you so much, Ayana. Throughout your application and your responses here at our council meeting, you have on multiple instances mentioned the value and importance of community service. So my question is, what does community service mean to you?
Community service to me means that you're giving back to, and I feel like community service is very personal to every individual. So like community service to me definitely means giving back to communities like that I come from. So I'm from San Bernardino, California. I come from low income backgrounds. And I went to school with very low funding and low resources. So when I came to UCLA, I learned that I have a bunch of privileges. Like I am in a privileged position to be here and to get all the resources that are available and I have access to. But communities like outside of this bubble, like outside of UCLA, don't have these services and they don't have like the resources. So community service to me, like being able to reach out to communities that look like me, that go through the same struggles as me, and that look like me, but that they like, you're able to service them in a way with your privileges and with your knowledge. I think that's what community service means to me. And also like giving back in a very personal and effective way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, that was our last question. You are free to give your closing statement.
I would like to thank you all again for your time interviewing me and even processing my application. Like, thank you so much. And thank you so much for learning about me as well and considering me for this position. I hope that I can expand my student advocacy work through the CAC and to help not only my communities that I identify with and come from, but other diverse communities and community service orgs on campus. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. All right, council members, any questions, comments, concerns you want to discuss amongst ourselves? Okay, so we'll go straight into the vote. Can we get a motion?
Oh, wait, do I say ARC's recommendation?
Yeah, sorry, my bad. Yeah, let's get our recommendation. Sorry.
Yeah, so ARC approved Ayana by a 3-0 vote.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Art. All right. Now can we get a motion?
I move to approve Ayana to the Community Activities Committee.
I second Divine.
All right. Milan motions, Divine seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Raising my hand.
I'm sorry. I see 12. We had 13 people here. Who am I missing right now? All right. I don't know if someone left the meeting or not, but yeah. Okay. So we have 12, and I don't see any other council members. So by a vote of 12 of 0-0, the motion passes, and Ayana is a part of the Community Activities Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to the committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. All right. Next, we have the Student Health Advisory Committee. We have 3 individuals. So I'm a little confused. Are there 3 positions, right? There's 3 positions, correct?
So Shaq, I think Anna messaged me before. We actually need 6 appointments for Shaq. So we decided Anna will appoint 3, and then ASC will find 3 applicants for this committee. So far we have 3, 1 recommended by Anna, and then 2 by us.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, first up, we have Caitlin Hernandez. Have they been promoted yet?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. All right, Caitlin, you're free to give your opening statement.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Hernandez. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a rising third-year nursing major, and I applied to be an appointment on the Student Health Advisory Committee. Last year, I served as the education coordinator of Sawang Filipino, a position that introduced me to like the concepts of cultural competence and equity. And I believe these 2 concepts are very valuable and important for members of the Student Health Advisory Committee to be familiar with, because they should guide us on how we can advocate for each individual student. Also through this position, I became greater educated on conditions that impact Filipinos, Asian Americans, and also other marginalized communities. And it really made me understand what student advocacy truly means.
I feel as though my experiences participating in student activism will allow me to bring a unique perspective to the Student Health Advisory Committee on how we can advocate for students' needs in terms of healthcare and ensure that all students have access to healthcare that focuses mainly on the cultural competence and equity. So these are just two things that I think are very important advocacy, and I know they will guide me since I've been in experiences that have allowed me to expand my knowledge on them.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, council members, let's get those hands raised for some questions. I see Eliana have a question.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Good to see you here. So I'd like to hear your plans / commitments for working on the disability rights and bringing up the disabled community's perspective on various health issues, COVID response, and health issues in general. Thank you.
So how I view this appointment is taking a kind of cultural approach to advocating for students, because cultural competence, as I mentioned before, is very important, but cultural competence also includes things beyond just our racial background or cultural background. It also involves our socioeconomic backgrounds and stuff like that. So I would want to provide a forum for student input so that we can also release transparency reports on top of this to see like the progress of the committee itself, and then also receive student input from the Disabled Student Union, for example, to see areas that may need improvement, and also just plan on releasing these transparency reports often so that students can also see if there's progress being made. And so I would just plan on making sure that there's more transparency in terms of the committee and making sure that every student is heard and that there's access to resources amongst all communities as well.
That sounds like a good idea. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi, Caitlin. Thank you for coming to talk with us. My question was sort of along the same veins as Eliana's a little bit, but what's something that you saw last year that like was sort of like lacking within SHAC, and what's something you hope to implement this year to remedy that and also just improve student health across campus in general?
I think access to mental health resources was something that I noticed, especially as someone who comes from a Filipino Mexican background. Is very hard for not only me, but also other students to reach out and to seek mental health resources. So I feel like there could be a way to improve SHAC and how we can advocate more for the students is to try to provide different workshops and resources to these students who may want mental health workshops, because I know like from like other experiences with other organizations that there are these different programs that even regardless of whether or not students may have UC-ship, they're able to attend free sessions or free just therapeutic sessions through like art or through painting and just general things like that for self-care. So I feel like opening up or coordinating with the USAC officials and also coordinating with other different organizations on campus to create these types of mental health based programs that all students can access.
Awesome. Okay. And then last question. Do we have another question from council? All right. Thank you. Caitlin, you're free to give your closing statement.
I just want to say thank you again so much for the opportunity to interview for the Student Health Advisory Committee. If I am appointed, I definitely plan to use my experiences in student leadership and at UCLA to always prioritize student needs and concerns and how we can improve these things. It wasn't hard, especially this last year, to see how a lot of underrepresented students at this university's voices were silenced. So I hope to be able to use my voice in this position to amplify their concerns and also to make sure that they feel represented at this university. So yeah, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. All right, can we hear ARC recommendations?
Yeah, so ARC approved Caitlin by a 3-0 vote.
Okay. Does anyone want to give any comments or any discussion? All right, we'll go straight into the vote. Can we get a motion?
I move to approve Caitlin Hernandez for our Student Health Advisory Committee.
I second.
All right, Eliana motions, Theodore seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
Awesome. All right, by a vote of 13-0, the motion is approved and Caitlin is now part of the Student Health Advisory Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I look forward to working with y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next we have Natalie. Have they been promoted yet?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Well, hey, how's it going, Natalie? You have the floor for your opening statement.
All right, awesome. Well, good evening, council members. My name is Natalie Benitez, pronoun she, her, hers. I am a rising fourth year majoring in psychobiology, and I feel that I am a good I'm a good fit for the role of Student Health Advisory Committee, considering my career goals in becoming a pediatrician align with the goals of the committee and that they do advocacy work to represent students. And considering that I come from a marginalized community, I want to ensure that these students, as well as non-traditional students, and for any students for that matter, are advocated for and represented within my position if I were to be on the committee.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, council members, we're opening the floor up for questions. Eliana.
Hi, thank you so much, Natalie. Appreciate your work and being here. So I want to ask, what's your plan to connect with student groups like, let's say, Disabled Students Union or other organizations, or and to reach out to students, even if people aren't involved in health or cultural advocacy groups, just to reach out to every student, reach out to as many students as possible, at least as an individual, because it's kind of, I'm sure this committee is doing great work, but it doesn't seem to be one we hear from a lot. I feel like it'd be good to get more students input in. So what's your plan on that? Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think definitely in your question, you mentioned that this committee isn't very much heard around the student body. And I think one way that we can reach out to these students, such as disabled students, non-traditional students, transfer students, is to work with cross-campus partners. This can range from departments such as BRC, BBRC, AAP, definitely just making sure we do our outreach, such as creating survey links. I know that we do have some on the Instagram page, but I think promoting those and even mentioning that we offer anonymous surveys to make sure that students are able to voice their concerns with their ASH Center or any student health and wellness programs that are offered at UCLA, that students have the opportunity to do so. Definitely navigating and working with also like the Disabled Student Union and just making sure that their students are offered a means to communicate with us. I think even holding events on campus, such as during our like enormous activities fair, just to make sure that students are aware that this committee exists, and in doing so, we can promote more visibility, transparency, and in doing so, just be able to afford more equitable healthcare for our students. And I think with that, we will be able to even possibly garner more volunteers and even pipeline students to join this committee. And because I'm sure that if we do outreach, we can gather students such as myself, where I, did my research, but, the research can go so far. And I think as a committee in its whole, we can do more outreach in ourselves to get our committee known in the UCLA campus.
A great answer. Thank you, Natalie.
Phoebe.
Hey Natalie, thanks for coming out today. Super excited to see you going for this position. My question is, what is your thought on the intersection between health and EDI, and how will that thought process influence your work?
Yeah, so I definitely think when it comes to EDI and health, there is definitely an approach we should take culturally. I think something that we need to recognize is that a lot of our students have different backgrounds, and when it comes to health, we don't all come from the same one, and rather this ranges from like our different income backgrounds. Some of our students are low income, middle income students, and they may not be aware of how to navigate healthcare, whether it's understanding their benefits through UC SHIP, what type of services they're able to access through the Arthur Ashe Center, even dental work. I know I've talked to many of my fellow peers, and they don't know that they're able to afford coverage to remove wisdom teeth, which is, I know, a lot of college students, that's one of the services that they need to do. And even in that, UC SHIP sometimes doesn't cover the entire dental work for them, and that's something that they have to then navigate for themselves. So when it comes to EDI and health, I think there is definitely a strong emphasis that I think the committee can play a role in ensuring that we offer a better health literacy for our students, and definitely promoting just equitable healthcare and ensuring that our students know the benefits that are offered to them.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you. All right, we got Juan.
Hi, Natalie. In your application, you mentioned that you're a first-generation Latina, and that you've helped your parents navigate the healthcare system as they did not speak English, which is something that I resonate with, in that we've been health advocates even before we needed to be for our parents. How's that? Are you carrying that legacy here, and will carry that legacy in this space as a person who comes from this background?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, definitely growing up, I did have to help my parents navigate the healthcare system. My mom did do so much and to ensure like that our like physical needs were met in terms of like making sure we were healthy, doing our appointments. But there is sometimes that translating or like understanding barrier for our parents, considering we're coming from first generation. And I think just to answer your question, to translate that into my role in this committee and continuing that legacy, I want to offer that, afford that knowledge and my experience to other students. I believe I touched base on it a bit earlier, but some students, again, even sometimes coming into like their fourth year, they still don't know what their UC SHIP that they are awarded, what that they're able to afford. Sometimes they don't know that surgeries they may need that UC SHIP is able to cover. And again, there are other avenues that students are able to take if UC SHIP doesn't cover for their healthcare. This can be such as ECRT, and if not, there are other like avenues that students are able to take. And so I think just understanding different policies that UCLA is able to afford to our students but are not so much outreached or advocated for, I think that's something that I will definitely bring to the table on this committee for students, especially marginalized students, because they're often like left on the back burner, and like they just don't know sometimes.
All right, Alicia.
Hi, Natalie. I have a question because I'm really appreciating your responses to these questions. But if elected, would your vision as the Student Health Advisory Committee appointment address the effect of politics and policies that have been established on this campus? Would it address the effect that it has had on social inequities, not just within UCLA campus, but within our communities and outside communities? How would it do that, if it would?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think definitely a way to approach like the social inequities that you mentioned. The committee can definitely, just in doing its outreach, I think being in its unique role where we are able to have these conversations with administrations and like higher power, and considering that we are essentially the representatives for over 30,000 undergraduate students and more than 40,000 graduate students. I think that if we're able to have that liaison role of making sure we voice our concerns for our students and saying that, like, you know, sometimes our students don't want to come forward to ask for help. They are sometimes they don't know, again, the benefits and all the services that they're able to use. I think addressing that in this committee, definitely through our outreach work and communicating with our cross partners and in our unique role of working with administrators and within the Arthur Ashe Center and other student health and wellness centers that are offered at UCLA is going to be a very important and pivotal role to do.
All right, thank you so much. That was our last question. Art, oh, I'm sorry. Can you give your closing statement, please?
Yeah, of course. I just want to thank the council members for taking this time to interview me and to ARC for conducting the interview process. I know it was very lengthy for them. I just appreciate everyone's time. I am really excited to work on this committee. I believe I have a lot of good visions and just possible different methods to promote our outreach and ensuring that all of our students are advocated for and represented. And our marginalized communities, you know, our non-traditional students, are students that are just need to be having a voice for them, that they don't know that we have these services is going to be very important. And if I were to sit on this committee, and yeah, thank you guys so much again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Art, could we hear your recommendation, please?
Yeah, so ARC approved Natalie by a 3-0 vote.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Is there any questions, concerns, or anything that council wants to discuss amongst themselves? Going once, going twice. All right. Awesome. Can we get a motion?
I move to approve Natalie as a SHAC appointment.
I second.
All right. Sarah motion, 1 second. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. By a vote of 13-0, the motion passes, and Natalie is now a part of the Student Health Advisory Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to working on this committee and having future conversations with you all as well. Have a great night, everyone.
You too. Thank you so much. All right. Next, we have Rebecca. Have they been promoted yet?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. All right. Hey, how's it going? Rebecca, you are now free to give your opening statement.
Awesome, thanks so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Becca Nelson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a rising third year pursuing a major in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology and a minor in public health. I'm applying to the Student Health Advisory Committee tonight. I'm incredibly passionate about health justice and health literacy, and I feel strongly that giving college students the resources to access and understand high quality healthcare while they are young will create a healthier tomorrow for our students and other members of the population alike. I hope to increase education surrounding the services for all students, regardless of if they have UC-ship or not. I know that a large part of SHAC is communicating with members of USAC, like you all tonight, to create lasting partnerships that will increase student health and wellness. My position as the Chief of Logistics for the Student Wellness Commission allows me to closely work with 11 different committees that focus on different aspects of health. So I hope to take ideas for improvement directly from those who know most about it. SHAC would be an incredible opportunity for me to make a difference in students' lives and model the healthcare exactly around what the student population needs, especially through these uncertain times.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, council members, I'll open it up with the first question. Rebecca, I mean, I think a lot of students probably don't know this, but you know, the administration plans to return to a pre-pandemic school environment. Obviously, we still have some health concerns regarding COVID and now the emerging monkeypox. So how will you work with the administration in this position? You know, to, I guess, I mean, I'm not asking if you support the position they're taking on it, but how will you work with them as they try to transition to a pre-pandemic UCLA environment?
That's a great question. I think the first thing for me is like just addressing the health needs of the students. And so making sure that students, especially who may be immunocompromised or have issues with health, have like the resources and the physician like notes and guidance that they need. I'd love to provide that for all students regardless of SHIP. Like if they need a COVID exemption for like they're not able to do this or that or like be in groups of this size, I think we should offer that free of charge, because I think instruction shouldn't be contingent on you being able to go and pay for a doctor. And so I think that should be a service that we could provide to all students and have appointments set aside for that. Secondly, I know the ASH Center currently, like their testing for COVID is really limited in what they cover. I was researching policy benefits before this meeting, and they only cover the like PCR testing through the vending machines, which is very limited. I mean, students are at home. It was pretty frustrating because over winter break, I had an exposure to COVID and I had to like pay out of pocket as a UC SHIP student. And so making sure there's expanded access to testing, also with rapids. I know there's like government sponsored rapids, but like oftentimes like that's not what college students need, and they need something to like test and make sure they're not exposing like in the dorms what could be hundreds of people. So I think providing things like that. And then on the monkeypox front, I think doing a good job to make sure that we're giving vaccine education. I know that like the public health department in Los Angeles is just starting to like kind of bring those out. And I think we should be supporting that and like giving information about it for our students to first go pursue them in the community while we don't have them at our own centers. And secondly, with that, like giving up-to-date information. I know that Vice Chancellor Beck, I think, sent out an email yesterday, but like who checks their email? So maybe making infographics that are available to students and then encouraging you all in USAC to repost them so students know what the policies behind it are. And then making sure we have resources for isolation, vaccination, and treatment for like all students, regardless of SHIP or not SHIP status.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was a great answer. Eliana?
Thank you for your excellent work. I'd like to hear about your plans, principles for dealing with long COVID and chronic illness in general on campus and supporting people who are going through those things and listening to them.
I agree. I don't think the ASH Center has great services for long-term care. As I've kind of seen what they do more, it's like very like one and done sort of care. And so I think having better referral programs and better benefits for students pursuing care, like I feel like going to a primary care physician at UCLA Health that's still covered by Anthem for our UC SHIP students would be a much better option. But I know those visits cost like, I think it's a $10 copay plus a certain percentage. And so if you're dealing with long COVID where it's visit after visit, especially with those other specialists that like the ASH Center probably doesn't have, that's going to get pretty expensive. So making sure that we have plans in place to cover those students. And then for our non-SHIP students, like also making sure there's a plan in place. I think one problem I've seen with the ASH Center in general is non-SHIP students are kind of treated like an outsider and treated like someone who can't pay. And I've seen like in my own personal experiences, friends getting denied from the care that they need because they're not SHIP. And it's really hard to go out. I mean, people with Kaiser have to drive 30 minutes to get somewhere, and that's if they're in a car. So like bus would take probably 2 hours. And when you're not feeling well, that's pretty important. So I don't really know entirely how that would work, but working, I know SHAC has close relationships with people at ASH. And so developing plans for both people, however that looks like, to make sure they get the care at an affordable cost.
I super appreciate that with my personal capacity as a Kaiser person myself, but also in terms of USAC and what the student body needs. I think that's excellent. Thank you.
All right, Anna.
Hi, Becca. Thank you for being here today. So my question is, what do you believe is the greatest health concern among students, and how do you plan on addressing it?
One of the biggest health concerns I see among students is kind of twofold. And I think that's our students are not pursuing preventative care. And I think that's because it's not presented to them in an accessible manner. But I personally love preventative care because it allows students to address problems before they cause more harm to the student. So obviously, like the best way to prevent illness is by stopping it early in its tracks. And I know something with SHAC is actually like, you have to vote on different price increases and stuff based on utilization and based on how much the plans cost. It's a really hard choice to like choose healthcare over like, you have to like balance the benefits students get and the premium cost. But preventative care is amazing in that it saves money overall. Like if someone can be saved like long-term illness, it saves the insurance plan money. So they're frequently very willing to provide more money towards these preventative care programs. Some personal issues I've seen is the ASH Center doesn't let you choose your practitioner. I think it's a pretty hard process to change. And so I think having more streamlined process, I know how important it is for me to trust my physician. And so I think that's something where if like you don't trust your physician or they're not from the same background as you, like it might be really hard to trust them to take your care with the utmost like sincerity. And so I think having programs where students have more say in their own healthcare would be great. Secondly, with that, I think finding alternative methods to the traditional in-person setting. I know a lot of students like myself, like I'm a working student, and so going during business hours is really challenging. And so I think finding ways to have practitioners outside of hours, late nights, early mornings, and even like email. I check my email at night and then I can send it whenever it's convenient for me. And so expanding options to make it more accessible for all students would be great. And this kind of coincides with the mental health care. I think it's one of the biggest concerns for the UCLA student body. I know in SWC, we see a lot of people complaining about CAPS and the wait times. So I think creating programs with CAPS and other resources to work on preventative healthcare for mental health is something that I think a lot of students need, because a lot of students are struggling with their mental health care. And so if we can find ways to reach broader audiences, then hopefully we can use like the limited amount of therapists they have to impact like people at a broader level before they might need to pursue like individual treatment, while still having those clinicians available for like the necessary treatment within CAPS.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. That was our last question. Wait, Elian, I see you have a hand. Okay. We'll get straight into the closing statement.
Great, thank you. My experiences in health justice, health literacy, and health education will help me to give students the healthcare experience on campus that they deserve. If selected for SHAC, I want to encourage the importance of primary care and expand options for students to access primary care. I want to help tackle the burden of mental health care and find solutions that will ease the emotional burden many UCLA students carry. I hope to work to support students ill with COVID and have easily accessible mental and physical health resources during their time of sickness. I aspire to better address the needs of marginalized groups on campus by partnering with organizations that serve them so that their voices are heard. I would like to advocate for the healthcare of students without UC-ship, as I feel they are often looked over for on-campus healthcare and face many challenges in accessing healthcare off campus. Lastly, I want to increase education surrounding the healthcare services available to students and about SHAC, so students know they have a place to go directly to voice their concerns about healthcare. All of these are ideas where I personally have seen faults in the healthcare system of UCLA, but there are so many other issues that I might not even be aware of. I hope to increase the UCLA community's engagement with SHAC and address their concerns accordingly. Overall, I want to be a part of making UCLA healthcare work better for UCLA students, because with all of the stress on college students today, their health insurance benefits should not have to be one of them. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Art, can we hear recommendations?
Yeah, so ARC approved Rebecca by a 3-0 vote.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then I wanted to approve her as the SWC appointee as one of them.
Okay, awesome. All right. Does anyone else have anything to say or discuss regarding Rebecca? All right, so can we get a motion?
I move to approve Rebecca Nelson as the appointee for Student Health Advisory Committee, who was awarded by Student Wellness Commission.
I second.
All right, I seen, okay, so, okay, Eliana motion, 1 second. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
All right, and okay, so all against? All right, and then all abstaining? And I think you have to abstain because you, right? Is that how it works? Jessica?
Okay.
Jessica, Patty, is that how it works? You have to abstain if you bring the person or something?
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you like, would Anna have to abstain because this is like her appointment, or no?
Oh, no, you can still vote. You would just abstain if it was like a conflict of interest.
Okay.
But yeah, it should be fine because you're appointing to the committee itself. So you can vote.
Okay, awesome. All right, and then I've seen Anna, you voted yes. So, all right, by a vote of 13-0, the motion passes, and Rebecca is now part of the Student Health Advisory Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, next we have the Student Initiated Outreach Committee. We have Perjane DeVos. Have they been promoted yet?
Yes, I'm right here. Hello.
Oh, hey, how's it going? How you doing? All right, the floor is open for your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Perjane DeVoe. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a rising fourth year majoring in sociology. I want to start by thanking you all for giving me the space to apply for a position that best fits my motivation to advocate for marginalized communities. My initial interest in being a part of the SIOC stems from my involvement in PISA's SIOC project peer as a high school student. I was admitted into UCLA as a peer pipeline student, so I know firsthand what it's like to be on the receiving end of what the committee and projects do. Following this, I also volunteered with Peer my first year. I was visiting sites and helping with workshops. I've also worked for Peer for 3 consecutive years. During my time, I have also led a collaboration with SPACE, which is Samahang Filipinos outreach project, to facilitate a workshop for our students at a mutual site, which was Carson High, my own alma mater. I also sat on the SIOC Mini Fund Subcommittee for 2 consecutive years. But in short, coming to UCLA, I have been advocating for myself and my community since I got here. So I know that I would bring a strong contribution to this committee from the unique experience that I have.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, we're gonna open the floor up for questions. Council, please raise your hands if you have a question. All right, Naomi.
Hello. I know in your application and in your interview yesterday, you highlighted a lot of your past experience and positions. How will you use what you've learned from those positions in this role if you are given it today?
Yeah, of course. A lot of my positions had to do with like a lot of leadership work. So for me, I feel like I can describe myself as like a servant leader. I feel like I know what it takes to sit in a position where I would lead following my team and my community's needs. I'm comfortable in delegating tasks because of all the experience I have. I know the importance of communication followed by comprehension. And I like to move with decision making by hearing and taking in multiple accounts, because the positions that I've held, including working for Peer, I had to listen to students. Being a part of PISA's board for 4 years, I had to work as a team and understand that we're not always going to agree, but we know what we're doing is for the greater good of our own community. So by that, I would process inputs and take that and move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Eliana.
Thank you so much, Perjane. So building on what you were saying earlier, what's your plan in terms of promoting respectful handling of all issues, as well as just trying to bring unity in the SIOC and broader mother org space where there have been difficulties in the past to try and move forward together?
Can you repeat your question one more time, please?
Sorry, I'll do that. Just want to ask, what's your plan on building a unity, a respectful process, and togetherness in the Student Initiated Outreach Committee, even when there's controversial issues like things relating to the CPO? What's your plan on building that togetherness moving forward?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think a big part of that is like making sure that we ensure equity, transparency, and accountability. A lot of times students tend to conflate their positions in the committee with their roles with their respective MOs or with their USAC positions. So I will be entering the committee with the intention and understanding that by sitting on this committee, I will be representing all students across the campus. And I would primarily focus on how we build support for our youth in our community. On top of that, for me, equity is meeting people where they're at and assessing the needs of communities and prioritizing them on an individualized basis. So with that, accountability measures is a strong practice to increasing both transparency and equity because it offers both a safe and challenging space for us to effectively share our voices and perspectives, which is necessary to coalescing. We work together on the committee with like the decisions we make, meaning that we are supposed to be holding each other accountable and making sure that we are valuing each other's voices to ensure that we as a collective are moving for the greater good of not just our own selves or our own communities, but all communities.
That sounds great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, Phoebe.
Hi, Prajane. I'm really glad that you're here for the SIOC space and going for the position. I wanted to ask you, given that being the chairperson might be a pretty stressful position, what your values that you plan on not, changing or wavering on, how, I guess just like what you will be focusing on, like regardless of the situations you're given.
Is that like more in terms of like you're asking what my goals are or how I'm going to handle multiple student positions? I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused about the question.
No, you're good. I'm really tired right now. So the way I asked that question was really bad. But anyways, mainly like, yeah, primary objectives that you really hope to accomplish by the end of the year. And also just like the kind of values that you hope to carry with you throughout your work, no matter what.
Yeah, so to answer your question of value, I think integrity is probably one of the most important values that I have. And a really big goal that I have, or one of my most prominent goals I have for the SIOC, is working to outreach and increase access for transfer students. Right now, our projects prioritize outreaching to K through 12 sites, with an exception for space, air, and peer. But I think it would be of our best interest on the committee to look into expanding on investing in sites at community colleges. Our mission, the SIOC, is to serve marginalized communities, and transfer students also fit under that population. They also require support, counseling, mentoring, and all the other services we have to offer in their higher education career, or even formulating their post-college plans. So yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. All right, that was our last question. Prajane, you can now give your closing statement.
Yes, so thank you all so much for taking the time out of your schedules to foster a space for me to not only apply for this position, but to share my experiences with you all. I appreciate the work you all are doing as well, and it does not go unnoticed. I definitely look forward to continuing my own advocacy work and seeing your guys's as well. And again, just thank you so much for this space.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. All right. Art, can we hear your review, please?
Yeah, so our passed our application with the 3-0 vote.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Does council have any questions, concerns, or anything that they want to discuss amongst ourselves? Going once, going twice.
Just want to say I like what Prajane said about increasing outreach of transfer students, and I think that'd be a wonderful thing for the upcoming year.
Awesome. Thank you, Eliana. All right. Can we get a motion?
I move to approve Prajane for the Student Initiated Outreach Committee.
A second.
I second.
All right. I think that was Eliana motion, and I heard Divine second. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
All right. All abstaining, please raise your hand. Divine, are you voting twice? Okay,
Sorry, my camera, my thing went low.
you're fine. And then all against, please raise your hand. I only seen like 11 people vote. Okay, so it's fine. All right, so by motion of 11 to 0, the motion passes and
Oh, sorry, I forgot to raise my hand. That's why. But yes,
Oh.
I vote for her. Yes.
okay, you're okay, no problem. All right, well, by a vote of 12 to 0, the motion passes. And Persian A is now a part of the Student Initiated Outreach Committee. Congratulations. All right. So we'll be moving forward. We're getting through this. All right. Next, we got Amethyst. Have they been promoted yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, awesome. Okay. You are free to give your opening statement.
Okay, awesome. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Amethyst Phillips. I also go by Amy for short. She, her pronouns. I'm a rising senior second-year transfer. I'm majoring in psychology and I'm minoring in disability studies. I'm applying for the position on the Committee on Disability, or UCOD. And there are many reasons why I would be the perfect fit for the position. The first being that I am a non-traditional commuter student who has a disability. Apart from my own personal ties, I also have strong familial ties to the disabled community. My grandmother has been a special education teacher and has been a consulting teacher for the visually impaired for over 30 years. My aunt was an ambassador for the Special Olympics for close to a decade. My mom is disabled as well. And I have two younger twin brothers that have autism. I have a working knowledge of disability through years of navigating educational needs for disabled children within public and private school settings, specifically when it came to my brother's educations. I've been an advocate for them for over 17 years, which I started when I was 10 years old. I worked alongside my mom to kind of ensure that my brothers, as well as the rest of their classmates, were granted access to the resources that they are entitled to by law under the ADA Act of 1990. Now that they're young adults, I also serve as their respite caregiver and help them maintain their Social Security benefits. I've been an active DSU member since this last fall and was present for the protest outside of Royce Hall, as well as the sit-in protest that we had at Murphy Hall over the winter. Being a disabled studies minor also has granted me more knowledge about the disability rights movement than I previously had coming to UCLA, which also sets me apart from the other candidates. And I hope to bring that experience, knowledge, and a fresh perspective to the forefront when it comes to making decisions that will affect the entire student body. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to open the floor for questions. Council members, please raise your hand to ask a question. All right, first up, we got Daniela.
Hi, Amethyst. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate the very detailed breakdown that you offered in your application about how UCLA can be more accessible, particularly in regards to academics. Would you mind elaborating more on how you would leverage your UCOD appointment to advocate for a more accessible academic experience at UCLA?
Yes, so one of the big reasons that's driving me to want to join this committee is because I want to bring universal access to course materials to all students, not just the ones that, you know, get accommodations under the CAE to get those resources online, but I want all students to get access to them because I'm actually a working student as well. I'm a non-traditional, like I've had to work full-time throughout the duration of my full-time student status. And prior to even coming to UCLA, I had access at community college to all of my course materials through Canvas, actually. And I'm glad they brought that to UCLA because that's a very helpful tool to use. But it really, just the sheer transitional differences between community college access and, you know, university level access is very concerning to me. And I really want to, you know, encourage the heads of the departments to kind of push their professors towards a more universal access approach to their courses versus, you know, maybe providing favoritism to the ones with accommodations that, you know, get like class notes or are able to record in lectures, that sort of thing. So I really just want to advocate for universal access for everybody.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Eliana.
Thanks. So first, Amethyst, you're awesome. Good to see you here.
Thank you. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Anyhow, so my questions are, first of all, I've definitely seen I was at a kind of survey / open letter, and some people mentioned having long COVID, but I haven't seen that addressed at all institutionally. So I'd like to hear your plans on that. And secondly, just your plans to see if UCOD could get like maybe more visible and more tied into the overall campus community. Thank you.
Of course. So when it comes to long COVID, I know a lot of researchers are still kind of in the dark on like what the long effects of COVID are on health. So I think just staying informed on, research studies that are currently being done regarding the effects of long-term COVID residual symptoms, that kind of thing, and just making it very transparent to the administration that these are legitimate concerns that the students have risen. And once you get COVID and it's cured, it doesn't just go away. And again, that's kind of like me falling back too on just kind of driving home the access that we all need as students to get to our coursework. Like, let's say if we do have these long-term COVID symptoms and that 2-week period of, accommodations that they're giving us currently can be extended. And then, I'm sorry, can you repeat the second part of your question?
No problem at all. Just wondering how you might be able to get UCOD to be like, maybe have a greater visibility or a greater like connection to the overall students and as well as faculty, hopefully.
Okay, that's a really good question. Just staying knowledgeable about, what's going on campus. I think, we got a lot of, during the Disabled Student Union protest, we had a lot of social media backing. So I feel like if we have a greater presence as UCOD on social media, as well as, hosting in-person events or like workshops, or just, bringing the committee itself more into the light would be very helpful in kind of bringing our name to the table, if that makes any sense at all, and just making students more aware that we exist and that, we aren't just, there because, we were given a spot to exist, but because we're actively working towards making something better on campus. And yeah.
And sounds excellent and really appreciate it.
Phoebe.
Hey, Amethyst, thanks for joining us. My question is, what do you want to see change about the advocacy space for students with disabilities on campus, whether that be specific to UCOD or just like at large?
That's a good question. I really just want to see disabled students be brought up into the conversation more, because I feel like when decisions are made, like, for example, accessibility on like the physical campus space, like if we are to put like a new set of stairs in somewhere, I want someone, to be there to be like, hey, maybe a ramp would also be a good idea instead of just strictly stairs, because stairs kind of make the campus less accessible to those who have, physical impairments that have a hard time navigating campus on foot, or, I just want to bring disability, the subject, to the forefront of discussion, because I feel like in years past, it hasn't really been on people's minds when making major decisions. So I want to see that change and make that change, if at all possible.
Okay, awesome. And that was our last question. Thank you so much. All right, Amethyst, you are free to give your closing statement.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you guys again for your time to, bring me into this meeting. And thank you for all the hard work that you guys have been doing. I know it's going to be a really long night ahead of you, and we appreciate it. And, since the beginning of my academic career, as I mentioned earlier, I've worked various career jobs and maintained full-time employment while maintaining my full-time student status. And that's not because of a desire to do so, but it was done out of necessity. And I know that there are others in that same position that I'm in as well. And being a disabled commuter student with in-person attendance requirements and no access to online resources for most of my classes placed a huge medical and financial burden on me for my first 2 quarters on campus, mainly due to the delay in access to accommodations as a result from the normal CAE onboarding protocols. And that's actually another thing I hope to work on improving in the months to come. I want to work on this committee because I want to fight institutional ableism, both the intentional and unintentional discrimination of disability that is currently present on this campus. I want to give a voice to the otherwise voiceless. We all made it into UCLA because we were hand-selected by a board of individuals who saw potential in us as students. But once we arrived, those supports and accessibility of the resources we need to succeed are just not in, place in the way that they should be. UCLA always touts its status as the #1 university, but it's far from that when it comes to assisting their disabled and non-traditional students gain access to a higher education. The resources that are available are shoddy at best, and access to these resources are being controlled by gatekeepers who like to micromanage the process to the point of placing undue stress, pressure, and anxiety on the students that truly need the additional help, and it often deters them, the ones that truly need it, from even pursuing attainment of them. It's wrong, and I want to work towards changing that experience for all incoming students to avoid what I had to go through in just this past year to gain the support that I needed to succeed in my classes, which still are far from inadequate compared to those that are currently being offered within state-level community colleges. My goal is to advocate for not just the disabled, but the other subgroups of our diverse student body that are often overlooked as well. As UCLA chose me to be a student here, I hope you guys will choose me to help make this university a better place for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was great. All right. Art, can we hear your recommendations?
Yeah, so we approved Amethyst by a 3-0 vote.
Awesome. All right. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, or comments that you want to discuss amongst council?
I just want to point out Amethyst has been with BSU for as long as I remember, and she's a real one and always been awesome. So yeah, very excited. Really lucky to have her here.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Can we get a motion?
I move to approve Amethyst Phillips for the Student Initiated Outreach Committee.
Second.
Wait, no, it's for the Committee on Disability.
Oopsies, for the Committee on Disability.
I second.
Who's that? That was okay, Alicia. All right, Sarah motions, Alicia seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I probably was muted. Hey, by a vote of 12-0, the motion passes, and Amethyst is now on the USAC Committee on Disability. Congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. I really look forward to working with you this year.
No problem. Thank you. Congrats. Okay, moving on. We got TGIF representatives. First up, we got Tyler. Have they been promoted yet?
Yes, I have.
All right, awesome. Okay, you're free to give your opening statement.
Awesome. Hello, esteemed members of USAC. My name is Tyler Wong. I'm a rising second-year transfer or senior here at UCLA. I'm majoring in political science and minoring in environmental systems and society. And I am hoping for appointments to TGIF or the Green Initiative Fund. Here on campus, the Green Initiative Fund has kind of been a little bit of a shadow, like nobody knows really what it is unless you're specifically in the sustainability space applying for funding. As a member of Broom Beekeepers and Diggs Community Garden, that was been my major exposure to TGIF, which is why I'm really interested in joining to promote outreach and also equity as well. So some things, a lens that I bring to TGIF will be equity, as the core 3 sustainable principles are people, planet, and profit. People being the cultural and equitable lens that I'm going to be focusing on, in addition to just making things viable profit-wise, and for the planet, that's the environmental part of it. Some deliverables I plan to provide include in streamlining the student support fund. Right now, we have a student support fund that gives over up to $500 stipends to unpaid sustainability labor on campus. But because each one is individually processed, there's over 300 requisition forms that are filed in the same week. And that took over a month to process all of them, overwhelming the system. So I would like to tack as many onto other funds that we approve. So for instance, if Broom Beekeepers was applying for funding for a new beehive, we would also ask for how many students are working on this project and attach their support funds onto that in one fund instead of multiple separate applications. Additionally, I also want to prioritize another one of our funds, the CapEx fund, which stands for Capital Infrastructure, which grants over $10,000 per allocation to use to reduce emissions, water, and waste, one of which is retrofitting specific strategic water toilets and faucets around our campus that have been identified already through a Bruin Home Solutions bathroom audit project to save over $1 million. And that project would pay off in the next 4 years. So we'd make all that money back, saving the planet and saving money as well. And finally, another deliverable I hope to bring is increasing transparency. When I was applying for this position, I found it really difficult, to be honest, to figure out what exactly my money, my student funds were going towards from last year's TGIF. And that's to no fault of anyone else, but I do think that it would be really important to use social media and our website to post every single decision that we make in order for people to really understand what this almost $500,000 fund is being used for. Some of the draws that I bring to this position include I'm a tour guide through Campus Tours program. I'm actually a lead tour guide, so I've given tours to over 1,500 people, admitted and prospective students to UCLA. Through that platform, I have a really unique opportunity to broadcast every single thing I'm involved in. And because TGIF is kind of in the dark, I think I bring a really interesting level of exposure to TGIF that is just so unique to the job to my on-campus employment. Additionally, I'm also a transfer, as I mentioned, and I think that representing transfer student voices here on every single board is really important. And TGIF has historically not had the best transfer representation, which is why I really want to be the transfer representation. But I know I kind of bored you to death with my little intro, but yeah, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Tyler. All right, we're going to open the floor up for questions from council. Council members, please raise your hand and ask a question. All right, Eliana.
Thank you, Tyler. Very impressed with that application. So I was wondering what your plans were for promoting improved air quality and addressing the health benefits and health risks associated with environmental conditions on campus and in communities.
Certainly. So I think one thing that I think of that comes to mind when you mention air quality is pollution, and particularly greenhouse gases. I think that that is a level of air quality, an issue of air quality that really affects everyone on a global scale. So one thing about TGIF applications is that every single application comes with a environmental impact report. So asking for applicants to include the emissions or what expected emissions would be from this project, or how many emissions would be saved. I think that would be really important, and I would definitely use emissions as a main factor in making decisions about what we fund and what we don't.
That sounds like a very good idea. Thank you.
Phoebe.
Hey, Tyler, thanks for applying to TGIF. I wanted to ask you, what do you really like about TGIF as of now, and how will you get students more excited about TGIF and the work that you hope to accomplish next school year?
Definitely. So I did mention the support fund, and I think that is one of our 4 funds that TGIF does. The support fund was created just 2 years ago, basically because sustainability has a class issue, has a race issue, has a representation issue in general. It is not accessible unless we make the funds accessible. So in order for us to have a student support fund to fund unpaid labor of sustainability, to increase equity, I think that's really awesome. I think the only thing that I would change is just how many application or how many requisition forms we fill out for the student support fund. If we can streamline it and attach it to main funds or mini funds instead, or as many as we can, that would be really awesome. But I really do appreciate how TGIF has really focused on sustainability accessibility to the space.
Awesome. All right. Do we have any more questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, Tyler, wait, I see a hand. Okay, Eliana, you got another question?
Thanks, appreciate it. So I appreciate what you said about sustainability, accessibility, and I was wondering what your plans or interest would be in terms of like outreach and trying to expand the number of communities and the number of students who are interested in getting involved in this kind of thing to begin with.
Definitely. As I mentioned before, I have a really large platform with a large cross section of the population. Being a tour guide, I give 3 tours a week to over 30 people each time. So that really does add up in terms of the outreach. But I understand that outreach doesn't just stop there. In years past, TGIF has funded sustainable ways or alternatives for cultural fraternities and cultural Greek life to find, because usually graduation photos can sometimes entail confetti or glitter, and that is not necessarily the most environmentally friendly. We know it's like small pieces of plastic and glass that are going to pollute the environment. So in the years past, we actually we reached out to some cultural organizations for their grad picks to fund flower petals instead, which is it's a biodegradable alternative. And it really was just a way that we were able to kind of use sustainability in the more accessible outreach area. So I really do plan on maintaining close relationships and outreach with lots of different cultural organizations, transfer specific organizations, and organizations that really do center around non-traditional students that typically wouldn't even be aware of TGIF or sustainability in general. But I think everyone can benefit from sustainability and the missions of TGIF. It is really just about reaching out to those groups, and I plan on doing that.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, that was our last question. Wait, Alicia, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. This is very simple, but I would love to hear your response. What would be your definition of sustainability, and what is your intention with this appointment when it comes to relating it to your purpose with the Green Initiative?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely, yes. Did you say disappointment? Could you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Oh, no, your appointment.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, that was me. Yeah, so sustainability, again, I mentioned that there's the 3 main pillars of sustainability. A lot of people just think it's environmentalism, and that's not the case. It's people, planet, and profit. So, it needs to be first people oriented. We're not going to be able to implement sustainable initiatives without making sure that they're equitable and that everyone is included in the conversation. Number 2 is the planet. So that comes in your environmental kind of aspect. And number 3 is profit. It's not realistic to expect us or our societies to invest in to invest in non-profitable or unprofitable or really expensive projects that aren't really going to have a lot of draw or buy-in. So for all 3 of those pillars to be met is true sustainability, and I think that's the lens that I'm definitely going to bring to figuring out what allocations we make for TGIF. And then, yeah, again, like some of the things that the deliverables that I hope to achieve, number one is just reducing our water usage. I really, really do think that UCLA is the second, or it's either the largest or second largest user of water according to the LA Department of Water and Power. And that is just not acceptable. I mean, the level of water that we use is just so unacceptable because we already are diverting so much of our water, our fresh water, our potable water from the Colorado River that we know is overextended and it's not going to last. So we do need to make drastic decisions right now. So this year, I really do hope to fund using our capital infrastructure fund to do those retrofittings that Bruin Home Solutions bathroom audit project has already identified, already outlined the prices for. We just need to get the money for it. And that project will pay off in terms of how much money we save on water. And also it would drastically reduce the amount of water by up to 1 million gallons of water every single year. So that is one of my main objectives, in addition to streamlining the support fund.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So that was our last question. So you are free to give your closing statement.
Yes, definitely. So I think that in this, in the question time and my introduction, I was able to successfully communicate my main objectives that I want to do and achieve as a member of TGIF if I am so appointed. I do come at this with an equity lens, truly sustainable lens in terms of people, planet, and profit. Nothing is truly sustainable unless it includes all three of those pillars. And that is something that's going to be a main driver in terms of making decisions for allocations. I want to streamline the student support fund by not overwhelming the requisition forms process. And I also want to prioritize the CapEx fund in order to reduce our campus-wide emissions, water, and waste in order to make a truly important impact on UCLA's sustainability. And finally, I do also want to increase transparency via social media and our website to publish every single decision that we make, not just the highlights. I think we need to make sure that students are able to see and readily access every single decision that we make with the money that we get from them. And as a tour guide and as a transfer student, I think I have a really unique platform that not only gets a large cross-section of the population, but has just a huge, I have a huge audience that I can promote TGIF, especially the ones that are not necessarily sustainability, but sustainability adjacent that we can fund, including cultural groups and non-traditional student groups. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for coming. All right, next, Art, can we hear your recommendations?
Yes, so Art approved Tyler by a 3-0 vote.
Okay, awesome. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns that council wants to discuss amongst themselves? Going once, going twice. All right, can we get a motion?
I move to appoint Tyler to the Green Initiative Fund.
All right, Phoebe motions. Can we get a second?
I second.
Who was that? I'm sorry. Oh, was that Eliana? Okay. Phoebe motions, Eliana seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Raising my hand.
Thank you. All right, by a vote of 12-0, the motion passes and Tyler is now a TGIF representative. Congratulations.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, next we have Grace. Have they been promoted yet?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
All right, you are free to give your opening statement.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Grace. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a rising fourth year history and political science major, and I am here to be approved, hopefully, onto TGIF. I was on the committee last year, and that is something that I feel really lucky to have been a part of. I really love TGIF because it is such a huge resource for students, but more importantly, it's for students by students. So it's funded by students, it's decided on by students, and its main purpose is to benefit students and sustainability. And I think that that makes it a really unique resource. And then the way that it's almost like a problem that there's too much money in it and we have to really work to spend all the money, which is a really great problem to have, but it definitely means that we can do some work on it. Another reason why I love TGIF is that it fosters creativity. We can see so many different scales of projects, from things that cost less than $100, and we are just like the one thing that helps people accomplish something that is a small change, or we can be a part of these huge infrastructure projects, which I think is really amazing. And so one thing that I think that we could do in TGF in the upcoming year is to focus on a more intentional outreach to student groups outside of sustainability groups. And that, I think, there are different ways of doing that through networks and using our connections through USAC or through clubs or through the groups that we know on campus that are influential. But also like a grassroots technique would be really amazing, I think, to get into classrooms and to do class announcements, or get onto Bruin Walk and just do some basic tabling or show up at the club fair. These are all really great ways for students who want to get involved, who are just out on campus, to not have to do any extra work in order to know about what's happening on campus and what's available to them. I think that TGF can also has the opportunity to do a better job at mentoring projects, because that is technically a part of what it can do, is to not only fund them but to work through with them. And I think that having a more involved approach with the TGF committee on the projects that it's funding would be really beneficial to all parties involved. And then I think just logistics wise, having clearer expectations of what the committee expects and what usually funds and does not fund would help applicants on the front end, so we can save time and efficiency on the back end, and then nobody is having to do extra work than is needed, and they have a really clear idea of what the committee traditionally funds, what we're looking for, things like that. And then also, as Tyler mentioned, Student Support Fund. They had 2 pilot years, and it really is has such amazing potential to work with students, but figuring out really early on what the committee wants to do with it, what feasibility it has, and how it can best work for students and for the committee and for everyone involved in that process would be really great. So overall, I would be committed to helping the committee reach its full potential and help as many students through that uniquely student process, and get more involved with mentoring and be a really engaged part of the process from very beginning on setting those expectations and getting the word out all the way to the end and following projects through to the end. So hope you consider me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to open the floor up to council members. Please raise your hand if you have a question.
What do you think you learned the most from your experience within TGIF last year that you really want to take those lessons into account for this next school year?
I think what I learned the most is, what impact things can have. And so you get a lot of applications of things that you maybe wouldn't expect. And so, things that are cheap, even like people requesting $50 to do a screening for their students to go to a club meeting and watch a documentary and learn about something, is really huge, even though it's cheap. And then other things, I think it's important to know what not to fund sometimes. And so there are some things that are really expensive and would take away from other potential projects that maybe we can step back and say, okay, how does this actually help students? If our goal is to encourage sustainability in students and improve student lives, how is this going to do that, or maybe not do that? And so I think it's okay to say no to things, is what I learned, that, we want to spend our money, we want to be able to fund these projects, but we don't need to just spend it no matter what. We are allowed to have our morals and keep them and decide, okay, this is a project that maybe some parts of it aren't totally sustainable, or some parts of it don't directly impact the student body. And so I think that that's okay to know the difference between those things.
You have another question? All right, we got Eliana.
All right, thank you. So I'd be interested if you'd be interested if you have any plans or just interest in trying to work on impact of the environment and health, and maybe connecting health related groups to try and build that connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge connection there that our environment has to do with us really intimately, and we are a part of our environment, and so like sustainability also has to do with personal sustainability, and even things like beautification projects or like clean air. Those are directly related to individual health, and mental health too, that students need to be mentally healthy in order to take on sustainable changes in their own lives or to have an impact on their community. And so I think that this is another way that TJF can get really creative and find those avenues of sustainability and things that maybe aren't like even if it's not a garden project or something that is like a water waste study, which those are all awesome things. We can step back and be like, okay, like this does overall help student health, which relates to environmentalism and sustainability, and to have a more holistic approach to everything.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And do we have any more questions? Going once, going twice. All right. Grace, you are free to give your closing statement.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for having me here tonight. I feel really lucky to have been able to be involved in different sustainable avenues across campus, and to have seen it through USAC and through clubs and through different committees and stuff like that. And I always come back to that. I think that TGIF is really, really special. I love sustainability at UCLA. I think that it's a really important community, and I think the community can only grow, and that is something that's really important, is to be as inclusive and accessible and open as possible, and to make TGF the best it can possibly be. So yeah, thank you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Council members, well, first off, Art, can we get your recommendations?
Yeah, so we ARC approved Grace by a 3-0 vote.
Okay, awesome. Council members, are there any questions, concerns, or comments you want to discuss amongst ourselves? Going once, going twice. All right, can we get a motion?
I move to appoint Grace Leary as a TGIF rep.
I second Divine.
All right, you got to say the position, like TGIF representative. Sarah?
Oh, as the TGIF representative.
All right. Sarah motion, Divine seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Raising my hand.
Okay, Anna? Okay, all abstaining, please raise your hand. All against, please raise your hand. All right, I didn't see Anna vote, but all right, by a vote of 11-0, the motion passes and Grace Leary is now a TGIF representative. Congratulations. Hey, awesome. Moving forward. Hey, as Juan said, thank you. Hey, we're getting there. Right? Hey, thank you so much to the rest of the candidates that are waiting. We will get to you. Thank you so much. We're moving through this. All right. So next we have the executive board position. We have Hemaja here for that.
Hi. Sorry. Sorry. Whoever's speaking, feel free to go.
That was me. She reached out to me and she can't make it to this board or to this council meeting. I just forgot to strike her from the agenda to move her to the next one. So that was oversight on my part.
Okay, no problem. Daniela, you have something to say?
No, I was basically going to address the same thing, but thank you so much, Milan.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, we're moving forward to the next position. General Education Governance Committee. We got Unusha. Have they been promoted yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. You are free to give your opening statement.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience and getting through this night. I really appreciate you all taking the time to meet with me. My name is Anusha Intizari, pronouns she, her, and I'm a rising third year double major in dance and sociology. I'm applying for the GEGC because as a student rep for the committee last year, I gained a valuable experience from the meeting with meeting with faculty, seeking advice from others, collaborating and bringing forward student voices and perspectives, and advocating for a more equitable experience for GE courses all around. I would believe I would be a good fit for this position because as someone who is up to date on the progress and non-progress of last academic year for the GEGC, and I've learned from my own strengths and weaknesses, I would plan to come forward with holding the committee accountable and ensuring that progress is being made, whether this is through syllabi evaluations, representative curriculum, evaluating retention rates, and so much more. Whether a transfer student or not, GE courses make up the first fundamental experiences that shape students' interests and shape how they take on UCLA. Therefore, if given the opportunity to take on this role, I will ensure to further the work that has been done last academic year and be the student voice and perspective of accountability. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to open the floor up for questions from council members. Council members, please raise your hand if you have a question. All right, we got Eliana.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your being here. So there's been, I think, a lot of challenges for our most familiar with disabled students, and we've had challenges getting heard within academic senate, not because of the student representatives who've been great, but just the general structure. And I feel like probably quite a few students from many communities and RE, the whole student voice has had a hard time. So how do you plan to try and break that down a bit, or bring in a bit of accountability or a bit of collaboration or whatever could improve the perspective of the students in these spaces?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that question forward. I think that's a very important topic that's often left out of the conversation around academic senate, and something that I even noticed myself within like my experience within the committee last year. I think there's always this conversation around how well, I know this was brought up earlier in the interviews, how well UCLA is doing, but there's never the conversation around like who's left behind in that experience. And I think the first thing that I wanted to do when coming forward is ensuring that within each meeting, like when there's progress made, I'm someone who's very critical within the decisions that are made. And I think a lot of the times we're going through having these great conversations about progress and inclusivity and accessibility, but there's not a specific action made in a specific group that we're referring to. So I think I was someone last year who always brought that forward, like who are we talking about? Who are we including when we're saying we want to create a more fair and just environment, ensuring that BIPOC students, ensuring that queer students and disabled students and students who have been historically disadvantaged within education, especially university settings, like ensuring how can we like bring forward the conversation around what are these communities facing. And in order to do that, I think it's important for me to not go by my own instincts and experiences and thoughts on that. I think it's very important for me to completely hold myself accountable for outreaching to my community and making myself open and available to all people to hear what are your experiences, what do you want me to bring forward to these meetings, because I think it is impossible to be an advocate if you're not willing to reach out to your community in every way possible. So I hope that's helpful to your question. I think also just ensuring that curriculum, grading scales, hybrid options, considering commuter students, et cetera, having those resources available and ensuring that professors are aware of that and know that. And I think if I was given the opportunity to be in the position next year, I would bring those conversations in every single meeting and ensure that everyone's reminded of that. So thank you.
That is excellent. Kudos. Thank you so much for being someone in those spaces who makes them not totally forget that we exist. Appreciate it.
All right. Next, we got Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for coming to talk to us at 9:52 at night on a Tuesday. But so I was just reading through just sort of your application and I liked one of your ideas, the STREAM initiative of implementing more humanity courses for STEM students. My question was, how do you can you elaborate a little bit on how you plan on doing that? And why do you think that's so important?
Yeah, and to kind of clarify on that point, I think for me, it wasn't necessarily, it was not my initiative at all. It was actually from Bridging the Gap. So that would be Emily Martinez, who just graduated. And my role in that kind of in playing within that STREAM initiative, which to also just go into more depth, was how can we ensure that more STEM students are encouraging them to take more humanities courses, and in trying to find how UCLA can provide that curriculum. And I think GE courses was the best way that Emily Martinez saw that being fit. So they reached out to me to see what I could do to help them with their initiative. So my role in that was, obviously I was supported their initiative, and I don't want to speak too much on their end because I know it was their initiative, but I just agreed to the point where it's like, yeah, a lot of STEM students should be taking humanities courses because there's a lot of untouched issues within the healthcare system and within just STEM in general. And for me, I think what is more important to mention is how I was able to reach out to the GEGC coordinator and ask if they could have a 30-minute slot in our committee meeting. And Emily came in and did a presentation to the whole committee, got advice, got input, and got all these great conversations. And they did ask a lot of questions like you just did, Sarah, how they think it would be possible and how we could implement it. So I think the question, I'm sorry that I can't completely answer it, but I think it's more of like an ongoing question. And I definitely want to bring forward that initiative next year. And because I think it was brought up in the very last committee meeting of the year, which is unfortunate, but there was a good conversation around it, but there was no action specifically made about it. Like, what can we do next with it? Which is a weakness that I want to advance and kind of talk about next year if given the position. So I agree with their initiative 100%. And I believe that there should be these conversations around inequality and specific other social injustices within healthcare, within STEM. But my role was specifically helping them bring their voices and perspectives into the committee. And that's something that I want to continue doing next year. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering.
All right. Do we have any more questions? Going once, going twice. Okay. You're free to give your closing statement.
Okay, thank you all for your time. Thank you so much for meeting with me, and thank you for your questions. The intersection between students, faculty, and administration is vital to the process of ensuring progress within academia. If given the opportunity to serve on GEGC, I will hold myself accountable for upholding the values of what a student advocate is. To be an advocate, one must be actively engaged and listen to their community. I will be available to all communities at UCLA at all times, as an advocate is not a community advocate if they solely go by their own instincts and experiences. Being able to serve on the committee with the knowledge, tools, and experience that I gained from serving last year will allow me to help advance the committee. GE courses are what most students, including transfers, enroll in when they first start at UCLA. These beginning courses are where students kind of first build their experiences, and they help shapes their interests and are fundamental to them exploring and finding their place on campus and in their academic or career pursuits. Therefore, it's especially vital that UCLA GE courses are equitable and accessible to all students and can be a framework for all UCLA courses to follow. Unfortunately for us students, and especially us students that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, faculty and admin have the final say on many policy decisions. So it's within our power to speak with them to get our demands met on an institutional policy level. And I guarantee that students will be heard, supported, and be invited into this space in this community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. All right. Art, can we hear your recommendations?
Yeah, ARC approved your application with the vote of 3 to 0 to 0.
Awesome. Does anyone, okay, Naomi, you got your hand raised?
I'll be quick because I know we're all freaking tired, but I just have to say, getting to know Nisha this summer, I know she's the person necessary for this role. She's a very critical person, and that has been expressed in her application, in her interview right now, and definitely is willing to put the work in to do the best in this position. So I just want to say I highly recommend her. And yeah.
Awesome, no problem. Thank you. All right. Any more questions or concerns? Comments? Okay. I'm sorry, a helicopter's flying over. All right, there we go. Okay, can we get a motion, please?
Move to approve Anusha and Tarazi for Academic Senate, General Ed Committee.
All right, can we get a second?
I second.
Okay. Ellie on the motions, 1 second. All in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
Okay, by a vote of 12 to 0, the motion passes, and Anusha is now part of the General Education Governance Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for coming. All right, moving forward, we got the Campus Retention Committee. We have Ashley. Have they been promoted yet?
I think this is a consent item, so I didn't invite any of the next applicants to council.
Okay, no problem. Well, wait, Devon, do you have a hand raised? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so yeah, consent item is just like, is anyone against? Ashley and Ryan being a part of the Campus Retention Committee? Okay, I guess we're good, right? I guess how's it go, right? That's good. All right, moving forward. I think it's the same thing for Student Initiated Outreach Committee from AAC.
Should be the same.
Yeah, okay. Got you. Is anyone against Anise of being a part of that committee? All right, they're approved. Next, Campus Sustainability Committee. Is anyone against Madeline or Tatum being a part of that committee? Okay, approved. Next is the John Wooden Center Board of Governors. Is anyone against Stacy Bang being a part of that board? Okay, approved. Next is Student Activity Center Board of Governors. Oh, wait, they put that down. Wait. Is Stacy Bang going for both of those positions?
Yeah, I think she was recommended for both.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and that's possible that they can be a part of both? Yes,
I
okay.
believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe the bylaws say anything against that, so.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, they're approved. And then lastly, Transportation Services Advisory Board. Is anyone against Jeff Van being a part of that board? Okay, awesome, approved. Woo! All right, everyone, we got it through. We made it through appointments. Woo! All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming who got appointed. If you're still here, all right. Now, and thank you, council members, for being engaged and kind of helping out. We hit 10 o'clock right on the dot. All right, perfect. All right, so now we'll get into officer reports. I'll make mine fast. Basically, just met with there's an individual, a president from 1967, putting together an annual. Every 5 years, they do like all the presidents that are like still alive come to UCLA. So been discussing that with him, coordinating that, working with my team, obviously, to kind of plan the year out, and then preparing a speech, the new welcome speech, where I'll be addressing all the new admits. So that's what I've been doing. So I'll pass it to IVP.
Yeah, so for the IVP office, in terms of like my office, we have held our executive staff meeting to discuss the next steps for our council. We held our bi-weekly meeting yesterday and did a development on event planning for our general staff. We also sent out our general staff decision emails. The directors are reaching out to the general staff right now and organizing summer committee meetings. In terms of council, I've worked with ASC since I chaired the ARC to organize appointments. Then we interviewed all of the applicants and emailed all of them to have them here for you all today. And then, yeah, so we worked on ARC stuff. In terms of like the next steps for ARC, if council members have appointments that they would like to recommend, please send ARC your kind of appointments and recommendations soon so that we can kind of organize with them and coordinate an ARC interview.
Also, if you can, like, tell your recommendations to save their answers to their appointment application so that they can send them to us just in case something happens with the online application. But yeah, that should be it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, next we have EVP.
Hi, I will also be going fast. We had our continued trainings for all staff. This week we met with Karen Hedges to discuss Bruinsville and this upcoming election. We also met with Ashley from the Federal Directors and Government Relations team to discuss future advocacy and ways we could work together. We met with the student government from, I think, UT Austin. Is that right, Carl? I think it's, yeah, to further discuss the student loan forgiveness initiative that specifically from UCLA, the EVP and the OP office will be working on. We met with Amanda, the director of BBRC, to discuss future collaborations. Team members today met with the senator to discuss SB 886, which is basically the CEQA bill, and also discuss concern on definition of affordable housing. And this weekend, a lot of the EVP staff members and directors, as well as our very own president, attended SOS, the Student Organizing Summit with UC Student Association. For this year, the main platforms for under Acquire will be disability justice, for Fund Our Services. For UC We Vote, it's non-penalizing election day. For Racial Justice Now, it's an eliminating citizens requirement for the UC hiring. For SEED, which is a new platform in terms of environmental justice, it will be divest the 30-meter telescope. And lastly, for Fund the UC, it will be the financial aid reform. So we're extremely excited to be working along UCSA and also excited to appoint specific people within our campus to head these initiatives. And if you have any questions regarding them, if you want to help work along them, just feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Next, we have General Representative 3.
Thank you so much, Carl. So I've been working with the amazing Rachel Gross, David Bocarsley, Cliff Berg, and everyone at Jewish Free Loans Association. I met a few state legislators and told them about the need for backing for interest-free loans and general conditions, the need for something more stuff based in the community. So there will be more resources that aren't dependent on the sometimes bureaucratic and difficult administrative systems on campus. I did that. I went into Northwestern Neighborhood Council and gave some public comment emphasizing the representation of students and work on disability rights and work on the rights of students in the community space. Also hired an amazing woman, Cecilia Barrican, who will be working on both nutrition and global solidarity. And I'm working on communication, staff development, and hiring within my office. So everyone, tell your friends, send in applications. We're still open. Anyhow, appreciate it. Much love to y'all.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have Community Service Commissioner.
Hi, y'all. So for the Community Service Commission, we've been working to kind of like put together our program for the fall quarter. So over the past few weeks, we've been working to look at budgets. We've started planning and organizing for events like that. We also are coordinating additional support to finalize the projects under the commission and their applications for CAC Annual, which, a reminder, the CAC Annual application deadline is coming up August 18th, I believe. So make sure to keep that in your radar. And yeah, I'll pass it on.
Awesome. Next, we have Facilities Commissioner.
Hey everyone, the main update that Facilities Commission has for this week is, we hired all of our staffers within the summer hiring cycle and some new directors. We're still missing an Access on Board director for our commission. Besides that, we met briefly with the Semel Healthy Campus Initiative, Be Well Pod, where it's just brainstorming different projects we could be doing for space transformation on campus. And then also briefly meeting with Travis from Disability Computing Program and Nicole Green from CAPS, talking about how we can expand accommodations
to students, especially given like COVID and monkeypox are still going to be a thing? How can we get students the resources they need to participate within campus? Oh, and also meeting with UCLA Transportation to talk about different projects that we could collaborate with them.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next we have Financial Supports Commissioner.
Hi y'all. So in financial supports, we've just been finishing up some hiring, looking for our representative for the CRC appointment. And then also we're gonna start setting up meetings with some admin to talk New York Times subscription. So yeah, that's what we've been up to.
Thank you. I know Theodore, the transfer student rep, had to cut out early, so we'll go straight into admin reps. Josh is not here, so we will go straight to Orlando.
Hello, everyone. No, I hope everyone's doing well, but no updates for me today.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we got Jessica.
Hi, all. Just one quick update. I will be sending out the signups for office budget meetings this week. We had some delays just from scheduling issues, but we've got those resolved. So I'll send it out for like the next 2 weeks, and we'll meet one-on-one with each of you to help you get those budget transfer sheets going. And then some exciting news, we have a new student government accounting manager who will be starting shortly. So hopefully by the time where we have the next council meeting, and hopefully once she's onboarded, we can have her come to a meeting to introduce herself. But she's replacing Vong's role. So she's going to be the division manager of the accounting team. So great news. And we're really excited to be filling our staff back to capacity to support all the projects and finances going on. So that's it for me. And I'll be in touch probably tomorrow with some scheduling calendar poll or something. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just about to bring it up. I know Fernando's probably pretty happy about that. He's been alone and unafraid. So next we'll go to Patty.
Oh, Patty's out tonight. She's on vacation.
Okay, awesome. We'll go to, I think it's Steven. Is he here? No. All right. We'll go to Archie. Any updates?
Hello, everyone, and good evening. No updates from me, but thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So we don't have any old business, but we do have new business. I guess the first thing we'll get into is the withholding checks from CPO. So it was a discussion that we were supposed to be having today, and voting basically on our stance, whether we were going to continue to support the resolution that last council passed, or if we felt differently about the situation. I know earlier we had 2 individuals come from the MOs and kind of expressed that they wanted to, I guess, hold this discussion off because of, I guess, new documentation or something that they just found out about. So I don't know, are they still here?
We have some reps from MOs, not the same ones, but they are reps. Should I promote them?
Yes. I mean, if they can speak to the new documents that were released this weekend to them, apparently. I know I see Kylie.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to it. So basically at the transition retreat / training for the CRC and SIOC, we were presented with some documents by AVP or AVC DeLuca and the accounting team going over the financial positions of the committees. And we noticed some inconsistencies between these documents and the documents that they had presented to us in August of the previous year. These documents are projections, so they go into the next 5 years, as well as documents they had are presented to us in the spring. So due to those inconsistencies, as well as new information provided by those documents, none of the MOs really feel comfortable in giving a solid statement on whether or not they want to withhold the checks, because with this new financial information they presented, it's caused a couple of MOs to switch their opinions, and we would really like this cleared up by, we'd really like this information to be clarified by the accounting team before we move forward. So this is why we are asking that you, I guess, push off this decision for at least a little bit until we're able to get in contact with admin to talk more about the specifics.
Okay, I did have a question for you. So you said all the mother orgs on board? I guess like kind of like they want to have more time to review the new documents. All the mother orgs stated that?
Yes, all I believe except for ASU, who was not present during our meeting today. But every other org has stated that they don't feel, or they would feel a lot more comfortable getting in touch with admin before making a decision. Nobody really wants to give out their statements just yet.
Okay. All right, Eliana.
Thank you. I agree with what you're saying and appreciate you coming in to say it. The one concern I might have is that continuing to table this could be interpreted by administrators as ambiguity, which could be interpreted as enough of an excuse to release the checks. Do you think that's a possible issue which will need to be addressed, or do you think tabling it is clear what that means?
I believe that because we are being very vocal and communicative to admin about our concerns, that shouldn't be the perception. Yeah, we're currently drafting a statement or drafting an email to reach out to set up a meeting to discuss the financial situation and the financial documents that we were presented, and hopefully to get some of that information or some of those discrepancies clarified. So I don't think that it is really ambiguous or it's pushing things off. It's just information that we need addressed before we can make an informed decision.
That makes a lot of sense. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Kaylee.
Juan.
Thank you so much, Kylie. I just wanted to mention and address this, address the MOs, in that I would love a clarification as to the metrics or indicators that you're okay, this financial statement suffices, and that we should continue to either go forward with giving the checks to CPO, or continue to whether to continue to withhold. I just say that because what it sounds like to as a representative is that with this voting item, we're deferring our trust to the MOs to decide whether we're ready or not to vote on this item. And just regarding the timeliness, like Eliana mentioned, and the timeline of us voting, with the time schedule, we need to finalize this as an agenda item the Friday by 5 p.m. the Tuesday before council meeting. Over the summer, we're having council meetings every 2 weeks. So if you all would like this to be visited by the next council meeting, I just want you to know that we should have that MO should have their suggestions and final recommendations ready by 5 p.m. of next Friday, not this week, but next week's Friday at 5 p.m., just so we can have that in our, we can be ready, we can finalize this agenda item and have that clear communication both with admin and between ourselves.
Yeah, I just wanted to plus everything Juan just said, especially like if, you know, the MO's got the documents like this weekend, like we found out like 5 minutes before that like, oh, actually like, no, don't talk about this, don't discuss this. And, you know, like we have been like, I think a lot of people have been doing like a lot of research on this and we've been meeting with a lot of individuals. And so it's like, we're continuing to like push this forward and forward. And I think that everyone's pretty much, you know, well versed in regards to this whole situation. So we kind of, we understand where the MOs are coming from. And I think that, you know, USAC needs to kind of go forward with a stance on this pretty soon, because, you know, as Eliana kind of mentioned earlier, it just kind of leads to, you know, ambiguity, and it just, you know, some mistakes can happen. And, you know, let's say admin says, hey, oh, sorry, we released the funds. We thought you guys wanted to release them. You guys didn't give us a stance on it, right? So I just think that we need to, you know, kind of make a stance in regards to USAC pretty soon. And I think the mother orgs need to definitely like kind of like, you know, give us some metrics in regards to, hey, like this is what we're looking for out of this. Because I know me personally from just speaking with the past president, I spoke with Robert, you know, before the checks are released, you know, I kind of want to hear from the CPO director in regards to, you know, you got to come in, you know, we're giving you this money. We need a report as well. Like, we're going to give you this money. We need a report too, because I think he's bound to do that anyway. Right. And I understand there's a lot of personnel issues regarding him as well. And I really won't touch on that because I'm not too, you know, well versed in that. And that's something that can be handled on the university side. But in regards to the budget, which USAC is responsible for, I think we do need some transparency. And I think before, you know, one of the things I'm going to speak with Motherworks about in regards to what they're requesting is to probably have the director, you know, come to a USAC meeting and give us a detailed, thorough explanation of the budget over the last couple of years. So I see Danielle, you have a hand raised.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. I would first of all like to start off by being very clear, and raising what the MOs have mentioned today during council and prior to this meeting, that I think it is most appropriate for us to table this discussion for a later date. And first, I personally would be more comfortable, and I think it's the best plan of action for us to meet with admin and MOs in a joint meeting to discuss this, because I feel like that is going to be the most efficient way for us to reach a conclusion, especially we're talking about an item that is being brought upon the agenda by request and push from administration. And so I think if we're all just able to sit down and have a conversation in the same place at the same time, then we're going to be able to be a lot more productive than we would be right now by discussing this, and it would be much more well informed. I think first, another thing that I would like to raise as well is that yes, we're talking about MOs, and like we're talking a lot of this discussion involves a lot of different stakeholders. But at the end of the day, the MOs are made up of students who are our peers, our constituents, and we need to listen to them because that's what we were elected to do as USAC council members primarily. And I think that it is fundamental to our role in order to fulfill this job in the best way possible for us to stay clear on that stance. And I think that we also need to make sure that regardless of how we are concerned that we may be perceived by whoever it is, in which decisions we make, whether it be on this issue or whatever future issues arise, that USAC has to come in contact with, that we remember what we were elected to do and that we're centering student voices 100% of the time. But that is all for me. Thank you for the space.
Eliana.
Just want to say, first of all, second everything Daniela said. Well said. Secondly, with regards to the whole thing, I don't think that like the MOs have been So like it takes people are busy. I don't think it's been such a delay. I think there's definitely been a push from admin to try and frankly get it resolved before we've come close to getting time to make a decision, the time to have unity, the time to deal with new information coming up. And I do think that it's perfectly reasonable to be taking this time, and it's perfectly like if the student initiated outreach committee, campus retention committee, mother orgs don't see a reason to have a vote because they're the ones who the money's for. If they don't see the need to vote on this, that's a good reason to hold it off for a bit. I also want to suggest, in terms of removing ambiguity, that we should say when we make the motion, we've moved to table this with the provision that the checks will not be released until we have voted to do that, and any move to release the checks before you actually vote to release the checks will be considered illegitimate and a usurpation of democracy at this university. Something along those lines. Don't have to be those words, but just to remove any ambiguity in what we mean over here.
Thank you. Daniela? Is that a new hand?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. Something else that I forgot that I didn't mention is another thing that I would like to raise from the MOs, being that if they're emphasizing that they do not have all of the information to inform us of what they feel comfortable for us to vote on, then let alone do we. And just based upon that alone, we cannot vote to, like, whether it be yay or nay on this item, we don't have all of the information to make a well-informed decision. And so up until this point, all the preparation that we have, because this is new information, then we just cannot make a sound vote tonight.
All right, thank you. I guess my final question is, Kylie still here? Kylie, are you still here?
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess the last question I had was just, so this new documentation, I mean, you don't really got to go into the depths of it, but I'm just trying to get more information. So you're basically saying like this new documentation that you got could change the MO's, I guess, stance on this topic, possibly. I don't know if you can speak to that. I know you can't speak on behalf of all of them, but I'm just trying to get some, trying to see what's this looking like right now.
Yes and no, depending on the answers we're able to acquire from basically the accounting team, because yes, it's making a couple of those in the MO space hesitate, but hopefully that'll be cleared up once we're able to sit down with the admin and get some answers.
Okay, got you. And I see we got Eric here with his hand raised.
Hi, to introduce myself, I'm the president of the Vietnamese Student Union, so one of the mother organizations. So I'm just going to clarify a little bit on at least our stance, which can give you a picture of maybe some of the other MOs. But as of right now, from the information that we have, we just don't feel comfortable. And so we had our stance, and now we feel like, just like y'all, we don't have the information, or we don't have a clear enough picture of the information in order for us to make a fully informed decision on what to do. And we're waiting on meeting with administration. We're trying to get this done within the next 2 weeks, but if not within the next 2 weeks, before September, before academic year budget proposals for the CRC and SIOC, so that we know whether we have a budget. And we will let y'all know within that time frame. We want you to make as informed of a decision as us. And as of right now, because as Daniela said, we don't have the ability to make an informed decision, we are asking y'all to table this again, like she asked, so that we can all come together and make as best of a decision for all of our constituents as possible.
Thank you. I see we got Najia.
Hi, so just to introduce myself, my name is Nadia. I am MAPS's outreach coordinator as well as a part of the MSA, which is one of the mother orgs. I want to second what Eric Tran had to say and especially emphasize the timeliness aspect. Like we want to table this before the annual year budget proposal, which was around mid-September. Like we want to have this resolved as soon as possible, but like that is like sort of the timeline that we're looking at until we have the information like Kaylee and Eric and Eliana and Daniela have stated. We can't make this decision. It's like throwing shots in the dark, right?
Thank you. Eliana, is that a new hand?
Thanks. Yeah, a few things. First of all, I think everyone in this room has had the experience of not getting information we needed, whether it's about the CPO budget or about our appointments, and some have been affected and hurt much more than other, but we've all shared this. I just want to reiterate to everyone that please never assume another student is delaying stuff when it's a lot likely to either be within no one's control or an administrative issue. So like this thing right now, I don't think the delay is because mother orgs are like, yeah, trying to hold anything off, but just because there's not an adequate flow of information to any students at this university. And my second point is I think we ought to get a meeting with the administrators soon so we can vote on this in our next meeting. But if they hold off meeting with us, but what do y'all recommend we do then? Like Eric and Nahia, what would you recommend?
Eliana, did you ask Najia a question?
Yeah, just wondering what you'd recommend, like if we're not able to get a meeting with admin in time to talk over this stuff, what's our plan for then?
If we don't have a meeting with admin, then we will, as the mother organizations, we will again meet and we will inform USAC of what all of our stances are as separate organizations and as a mother organizations coalition as a whole to best inform you with whatever information that we'll have at the time. But again, we're hoping that we're going to meet with admin before then, and we're assuming that that is like the worst case scenario at the moment. So once we meet with admin, our plan is to meet separately, sort out all of our separate statements, sort out all of our views, and then inform y'all as best as possible. I think I can speak for all of us here as student leaders, where we're all trying to do what's best for our communities. And this is just us trying to protect our staff, trying to protect our people, and trying to make sure that they're all safe and secure.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Eric, and looking forward to hearing from you and being in the meeting with you if you're interested in that.
All right. So thank you so much to the individuals that came to speak today. I really appreciate it. So I guess I want to hear from council members right now. What is everyone thinking? I know I've heard from a couple. If no one has anyone got any questions, concerns, or comments, Naomi.
I move to table this discussion.
I second it.
All right, Naomi motions, 1 second, all in favor?
I'm raising my hand.
All right, everyone keep your hands up. I see 8 right now. Well, 9, 10, and then I got the verbal. Okay, all abstaining. Wait, Divine, is that a?
Sorry, I was thinking I'm not abstaining. That is the first one.
Okay, all right, so all right, then by motion of 12-0, we are tabling the discussion for withholding checks from CPO. Okay. moving forward, we're gonna
And
do,
I just put it on the record again that this is not an approval to anyone to release them. Any such move will be considered illegitimate or simply tabling it for lack of information to make a thoughtful decision possible going forward. Thanks.
okay, thank you, Eliana. All right, now we'll give the floor to Divine for the resolution to support the creation of a asynchronous election day.
Yeah, can you promote Eva and Carmen, please? They will be speaking on the resolution.
Yes. All right. You said in Carmen, oh yeah, there we go. Floor is yours.
Yeah, Eva and Carmen, whenever you're ready, if you want to give introductions, and then I don't know if you want to share screen, Carl, or if it's access to share screen to pull up the resolution, or if people can just click on it based off the agenda, whichever.
Yeah. Milan, can you share screen?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So just to introduce myself really quickly, my name is Eva and I'm internal chief of staff to Divine. I'm really honored to be in this space to read this resolution that we've been working on. So I'll begin now. It's a resolution to support the creation of an asynchronous election day. Whereas while 74% of UC students registered to vote in the 2018 midterm elections, only 59% of UC students turned out to vote, and individual campuses had alarmingly lower rates, such as UC Merced, with a 34% overall turnout rate. Whereas while 68% of UC students registered to vote during the 2016 presidential elections, only 50% of UC students turned out to vote. Whereas the UC has recognized barriers to voting for UC employees and in compliance with Election Code Section 14000A provides up to 2 hours of paid time off for employees on election day to cast their ballots. Whereas students have no protections to vote and commuting students experience even greater difficulty finding time to vote. Whereas institutional support for time off to vote and nonpartisan voter registration efforts have been found to be the most effective strategy to improve student civic engagement and voter turnout. Whereas having time in the day to go vote is critical for voter participation amongst college students and faculty. Therefore, let it be resolved that the Office of the Chancellor convenes a committee to be composed of 2 representatives from USAC, 1 representative from the Academic Senate, and 1 representative from the Office of the Chancellor to discuss and put forth a recommendation to the UCLA Registrar no later than January 1st, 2023 for the implementation of an asynchronous instruction day on election day of every academic calendar beginning on the 2023 to 2024 academic year. Therefore, let it be resolved that the USAC supports calling on UCLA to implement asynchronous election day is to be effective beginning the following academic year, 2023 to 2024, to be observed on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023.
Carl, you're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
There you go. Thank you. I was saying thank you so much, Eva, for reading that, and the EVP office for all the great work that you've done and will do. All right. I think this is pretty good. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, or comments about this? Okay. If not, can we get a motion?
I move to approve the resolution for an asynchronous election day.
I second.
All right. Eliana motions, 1 second. All in favor, please raise your hand.
raising my hand.
And by a vote of 12 to 0 to 0, the resolution passes. All right, awesome. Okay, we got through it, everyone.